Early in the morning, Doflamingo woke up from his sleep. Lying on the bed was a beautiful woman with excellent figure and good looks, but Doflamingo couldn't quite remember her name at this time. Was it Scarlet? Or is it Megan? But it doesn't matter, anyway, I won't sleep with her a second time. After washing up, Doflamingo put on a brown and black casual suit and came to the restaurant. The chef, who has already been familiar with his schedule, has prepared a breakfast that suits Doflamingo's taste. Soon, well-trained maids dressed in maid outfits brought trays of breakfast to Doflamingo's table. Today's breakfast is a sea animal steak, some stir-fried vegetables, and a bowl of pumpkin porridge. While Doflamingo was drinking porridge, Senor came in from outside the restaurant. Doflamingo glanced at him and didn't speak, but Senor quickly came to Doflamingo's side and said in a low voice, "Marine's fleet appeared on the northern route about 2 hours away from Cervantes Island." "Aiming at us?" Doflamingo asked softly, putting down the porridge bowl. 9 times out of 10, judging from the configuration of the fleet, at least Marine Vice Admiral is leading the team. "We haven't provoked Marine recently, so according to what you said before, there is a high probability that they are here for the Mads team." Senor nodded and responded quickly. Doflamingo was silent for a moment. He seemed to be thinking about something while eating his breakfast. After about a dozen seconds, Doflamingo said, "Go and ask Diamante to tell Judge and the others that we have prepared the funds for the preparation. After 1.5 hours, we will send them away at the port." "Understood." Senor responded. Soon, the Senor was off to carry out Doflamingo's orders. And Doflamingo, after finishing his breakfast, picked up the napkin on the table and wiped the corners of his mouth. He glanced out of the window not far away. Today is really a beautiful day, with the sun shining brightly. It's really a day that is not suitable for vampire activities like me. Doflamingo smiled and murmured. Soon, on the pier, the Mads team members were all ready to go, refreshed, and waiting to go back to continue their great research. At some point, Doflamingo changed into a black suit again, holding a sun umbrella, and was standing on the pier, bidding farewell to these scientists. "Your Excellency Judge, this is the 10 billion I promised earlier. At present, our Donquixote family has prepared all the funds, which will be used as a reserve fund and locked up in the family treasury. You take this check, and so do you. People in the dark world naturally understand the credibility of this thing." Doflamingo handed a check in his hand to Judge and said. Judge wasn't too polite, he just waited for the check, took it and checked it carefully. "It is a large check that the Donquixote family circulates in the dark world." "That's right. In many ways, the Donquixote family does not pay attention to credibility. It's not bad. There is a saying that is good: why should I pay you for something I got by my ability? But although in many aspects, reputation can be lost, but there is only one point, which is the rule that all people who want to hang out in the dark world must abide by, and that is money exchange. Because it is a business that cannot be seen, it is basically impossible to do business in this dark world through the formal banking channels established by the world government. The funds for large transactions are generally endorsed by a few qualified bigwigs in the dark world, and the dark bank is established to support the completion of the transaction. And North Blue, the bank of the Donquixote family, has this qualification. Many businesses in the dark world of North Blue use their Donquixote family's large checks for cashing. Anyone within the scope of North Blue that meets the conditions for check cashing will surely be satisfied. First of all, Judge confirmed the authenticity of this check. Secondly, he looked at the cashing conditions. Well, there is no problem. Only the Mads team can cash this check worth 10 billion Baileys. Can't use this check to pay the 10 billion Baileys in the dark bank of the Donquixote family. In fact, this is also a guarantee to a certain extent. It not only protects the interests of the Mads research team, in case they lose this check, the money will be gone. It also protects the interests of Doflamingo. The money I invest in you can only be used for the research of the Mads team. Anyway, Judge felt that what Doflamingo meant by giving the check was just that, and he could accept it. After all, he really didn't intend to take the money, or something. But in fact, what Doflamingo means is that there is no plan to cash this check at all. Marine is about to arrive now. Maybe tomorrow, the Mads research team will be gone. At that time, no one will be able to withdraw this check, so Doflamingo does not need to prepare any money at all, which is quite reasonable. The main thing is to talk about credibility. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with the check, Judge also said with emotion, "My lord, you are really a model for our North Blue dark world." What he said was polite enough, and he directly called Doflamingo the young master. Sure enough, if the money is in place, any problem can be solved. Even Dr. Vegapunk on the side, his favorability for Doflamingo has skyrocketed. Don't care about Doflamingo, but at least he really cares about credibility. If you give money, you will give money. I really hope that we can continue to cooperate in the future. After all, what they do in scientific research is short of money. Soon, Doflamingo chatted with the others, especially he held Quinn's hand and said sincerely, "These days, I think we are very destined. If there is a chance in the future, I hope it can also deepen our relationship and friendship." Although Quinn has his own pride, he still has a good sense of Doflamingo, and he is very happy to say, "Next time we meet again, I will make red bean soup for you with my own hands. The taste. You will definitely be addicted." In the end, with everyone's reluctant parting, Judge and others boarded the Vinsmoke family's warhouse, waving their arms, and slowly sailed away from Cervantes port with a heavy check. When the warhouse gradually disappeared on the sea, Doflamingo revealed an evil smile and said, "Keep an eye on it, and make a detour to breathe for Marine." "Ah?" The slightly upright Hayarding said in surprise, "Is this going to betray them? Isn't that good?" Doflamingo gave Hayarding a blank look and said, "With your personality, if you hang out in the dark world, you will be eaten up sooner or later. Remember, Hayarding, we came out to hang out because of a lack of loyalty. Betrayed brother, seduced the second." Cough cough. Seeing that Hayarding's 3 views were about to collapse, the senor on the side tapped Hayarding's calf helplessly and said, "Don't listen to the young master's nonsense. You just need to remember a little bit. We do things with the Donquixote family's benefits are at the core, and the rest is irrelevant." Diamante on the side also smiled evilly and said, "That's right, Hayarding. We do things like this." Soon, Marine's fleet received a signal and information from nowhere, and the whereabouts of the MADS research team were leaked to Marine. Although Sengoku Admiral was a little confused, he quickly dispatched observation ships to confirm the authenticity of the news. Not long after that, the entire Marine fleet changed its course slightly and rushed towards Germa's warhouse. At the same time, Judge was standing on the deck of the warhouse, holding a check in his hand, and said happily, "How? Let me just say it. Coming to North Blue is like coming to your own home. Now this is just a 10 billion, just wait, the Donquixote family will pay the remaining 10 billion in a short time. It has to be you, Judge." Quinn smiled, and said to Judge casually, "After all, he has really brought sponsorship and investment to our research team, and it is reasonable to praise him." Judge was also a little flustered, and said proudly, "That is, in North Blue, no one dares to disrespect me." But as soon as he finished speaking, there was a bang, and a spray of water exploded on the sea not far from the warhouse. It was shelling. "Who?" Judge raged. "This lousy was fired just after bragging. Do you want to save face?" As a result, when they turned around, they could see that not far away on the sea level, the entire Marine fleet had dispersed, blocking their way forward. On the docks of Cervantes, Doflamingo was sitting on a stake, and Senor was standing beside him with an umbrella to shade him. Hearing the faint sound of bombardment from the sea level, Doflamingo slowly exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "It's just such a short distance, I think that guy Judge can escape back, right?" "What if they don't escape?" Senor asked. "Then I can only say, I heard the roar of artillery fire, and I went to check it out of concern." Doflamingo knocked the soot in his hand and said. But as soon as Doflamingo finished speaking, he saw black smoke rising from the warhouse on the sea level, looking like it was almost sunk, and was desperately rushing towards Cervantes. "Look, isn't that coming?" Doflamingo smiled. Senor also looked over there, and then, he saw 5 Marine warships chasing after the warhouse, continuously firing bombardment at the warhouse. But it can be seen that they don't want to sink the warhouse, but want to force this thing to stop. On the flagship of the Marine fleet, the tea-fish cake bit a cigarette, and said with a casual attitude, "Mr. Admiral, Cervantes Island is ahead. Do you want to let them go? Let me tell you, why don't we go to the rescue after the sinking? Anyway, we have already captured the most important Dr. Vegapunk, and the rest don't need to all live, right?" "That's right. As soon as we met before, Gia directly forcibly boarded Germa's war, wounded Judge with lightning speed, and directly snatched the main target, Dr. Vegapunk. As it turned out, Judge really deserved to be a member of the dark world of North Blue, and just as Doflamingo said, the reason he came out to hang around was to betray his brother." Taking advantage of the extra effort to escort Dr. Vegapunk to the warship, Judge and the others had no intention of rescuing the doctor at all. Apart from anything else, they turned on the full horsepower, turned the course of the warhouse, and returned directly to Cervantes. It seemed to them that as long as they fled to the island, they would have a chance to get rid of Marine's pursuit. Although in fact, it doesn't seem to be the case, but thinking about it carefully, returning to Cervantes at this time is indeed the best choice. It is better than being treated as a living target by Marine in this sea, right? Marine Admiral Sengoku standing next to Cake had a calm expression and said without turning his head, "It's okay. According to our investigation and information, Dr. Vegapunk is the core of MADS, so when Doctor is protected by us, the task has been completed. Sengoku came out this time with 2 tasks. The first one was to disband the MADS research team, and the second one was to bring back Dr. Vegapunk. But in fact, these 2 tasks can be completed as long as the Doctor is taken away. So now, for Sengoku, his mission has been completed, and the reason why he is still letting Germa's Warhouse escape is a bit personal. That is, go to Cervantes, and see for yourself what kind of guy is the blood brother of my adopted son, Donquixote Doflamingo. Is it as evil as the rumors and impressions? Soon, Marine arrived at Cervantes' coastal defense line. Before Sengoku, the Marine Admiral, could say anything, Cervantes fired directly. Cervantes' dense coastal defense artillery directly fired a round of salvo, and the dense shells exploded in the sea in front of the Marine fleet instantly, and the waves rolled by the explosion could be considered as a response to the Warhouse. Then came the announcement from Cervantes' gigantic broadcast. Ahead is private territory. But before the big broadcast finished speaking, Sengoku waved his hand, and the next moment, Marine's cannon also roared, and it was a volley of fire, and they bombarded Cervantes' port in unison. On the ground, the big broadcasting tower was blown into ruins in an instant. It can also be seen from this that Marine's armament equipment is obviously more advanced than that of Donquixote family, and it can strike outside the range of Donquixote family's coastal defense artillery. In fact, not only the Donquixote family, the rotatable naval gun on the deck of the Marine warship, its range is notoriously powerful, basically surpassing the range of 99% of the coastal defense guns in the world, so when Marines attack pirate islands, they often have a great advantage. It can be said that there is no demur. The war broke out directly, and the warship was forced to break through under the bombardment of the Cervantes coastal defense guns. At the same time, the huge shipborne guns were at an appropriate angle to the sides, and the artillery that could play a role was also roaring, counterattack toward Cervantes. In the port, Doflamingo looked at the constant explosions and gunpowder smoke around him, feeling a little surprised in his heart. Are people in Marine so arrogant with hockey? We haven't finished a sentence here. Even if we fired, we didn't aim. It can be said that we just said hello, and the other side called directly? If I remember correctly, our Donquixote family, it seems that we haven't changed careers to become pirates yet, right? It is worthy of being the overlord of the sea. My lord, our firepower can't stop Marine's breakthrough at all. A small cadre of the Donquixote family braved the flames of war and rushed to Doflamingo's side to report. Doflamingo raised his hand and pushed the frame on the bridge of his nose, with an evil smile hanging on the corner of his mouth, and said, "Okay. Let's stop saying hello. Marine's temper is really explosive. Stop shelling. Everyone, withdraw from the coastline, organize a second line of defense in the towns." Although Doflamingo thinks this second line of defense is useless. After the younger brothers started to do things, Doflamingo was also observing the approaching warships, and he didn't know who was leading the team. So atmospheric? But it's true, when Cervantes' coastal defense artillery stopped bombarding the Marine fleet, Marine also quickly stopped bombarding it. The two sides seem to have entered into a strange confrontation, and this confrontation is undoubtedly more advantageous for Marine, because their warship can enter Cervantes' port more smoothly. Soon, the Warhouse belching black smoke arrived at the disfigured port wharf that had been bombed. Doflamingo pretended not to understand the situation very much, and leaned forward. Then, Judge, who seemed to have been stabbed, ran off the boat with Quinn, Geisa, Ba-Jin and others in a hurry. What happened? Why did Marine attack you all of a sudden? Doflamingo asked impatiently. Judge heard the words and cursed. We don't know, but just now there was a Marine's rear admiral who directly broke through to our warhouse, saying that the world government has classified our MADS research team as an illegal organization and wants to ban it. And while we were not paying attention, Dr. Vegapunk was forcibly taken away. Dr. Vegapunk has been captured by Marine, Doflamingo said in surprise. Okay, Judge, are you selling your teammates so smoothly? Damn you. Before Doflamingo could find out more about the situation, Marine's broadcast also came. Cervantes, hereby inform you that the MAD Scientific Research Team is an extremely dangerous and illegal scientific research organization, and I am waiting for Marine to be ordered. Please cooperate with Marine's actions as soon as possible, and hand over all MAD's members. Otherwise, it will be deemed that you have violated Article 72 of the Constitution of the World Government and refused to cooperate with Marine to perform tasks. We have the right to send Cervantes listed as hostile target. At that time, we will use force. Repeat. Cervantes, hereby inform you. Not to mention, Marine really deserves to be a regular army. Although the port of Cervantes has been violently bombed just now, but when things come to an end, I still have to tell you what law you violated and how you will die later. Elegant, indeed elegant. After listening to Marine's shouting here, Judge also looked at Doflamingo with a little bit of defense, fearing that Doflamingo would not be able to withstand the pressure of Marine, and directly attack them. But at the next moment, Doflamingo said in a very haughty way, "Since I decided to sponsor Mads, we have been considered a cooperative relationship. Everyone in North Blue knows that I, Doflamingo, have always been loyal and will never betray my partners. Don't worry. Alright, this matter, I'll take it." Quinn, Geisa and others were very moved when they heard this, and Doflamingo and others were surprised. But Judge is a little ignorant. Who in North Blue doesn't know you? Doflamingo is notorious for your lack of loyalty. Did you take the wrong medicine today? Judge and the others were led by Senor and the others, and quickly headed to the castle, while Doflamingo stood alone at the pier, waiting for the Marine to arrive. Soon, Marine's warships arrived near the Gulf of Cervantes, but the fleet didn't all come close, but went into a state of blockade, locking all the outlets of Cervantes. Only the flagship of Marine slowly sailed into the port. Then, the boat ladder was lowered, and several figures walked down from it unhurriedly. Doflamingo also gradually saw those figures clearly. Some of them he didn't recognize, and the only two he knew were big men. One is the future Admiral of Headquarters candidate Chadu Gage, but it seems that he is quite young now, and he only wears the Rear Admiral epaulets. Obviously, he is still in the growth stage. The other one is in the mature stage, and now, it should be the Admiral of Headquarters Sengoku who is in the peak state. Doflamingo was observing Marine's people, and Marine's people also saw him. Sengoku Admiral was wearing Marine's cloak of justice, with a serious expression on his face, and looked at Doflamingo from afar. It can be said that he is not uncommon in photos. After all, they are people he pays more attention to, but this is the first time he has seen real people. By visual inspection, Doflamingo is about 3 meters tall, wearing a pair of sunglasses in a neat black suit. He looks young and handsome, as if he is a successful person. The only thing that stands out is that this guy is holding a parasol in his hand, a little strange. Donquixote Doflamingo. Sengoku Admiral looked at Doflamingo and whispered softly. Doflamingo seemed to have heard the voice, the corners of his mouth curled up, and he said with a smile, "Fu Furfur, Marine Admiral has dispatched in person. It's really a big scene." But obviously, Sengoku Admiral has no intention of continuing to talk to him. On the contrary, Cake, who was following Sengoku Admiral, said, "Doflamingo, you should have heard the announcement just now, so I won't explain anything to you. Hand over the remaining members of the Mads team as soon as possible, so that we can live in peace, too." The core of the Mads research team is Dr. Vegapunk, and the rest are nothing more than additions. As far as I know, your Marine has already captured Dr. Vegapunk, so can you. Let this matter stop here. After all, they are the guests of my Donquixote family. If they are taken away from my Cervantes Island by you, who will dare to come to my place as guests in the future? Doflamingo said softly. As soon as Doflamingo finished speaking, Jaji couldn't help laughing, and after two voices, Jaji said, "Doflamingo, isn't it in North Blue that you're used to dominating the world? It makes you look at the sky from a well? What makes you think that you are qualified to bargain with this naval headquarters? If it weren't for Sengoku Admiral who seems to have a special opinion of you, why would we Marine talk so much nonsense with you?" Doflamingo narrowed his eyes slightly when he heard this, and then said, "Qualifications. You can try it." Jaji froze for a moment. Isn't this kid too arrogant? Immediately, he turned his head and glanced at Sengoku Admiral. Sengoku Admiral nodded lightly and said, "It's good to try him." The boss here spoke up, and Jaji stopped worrying about anything, sneered, and said with a fierce light in his eyes, "I hope you won't cry too badly later." At the same time as the voice fell, Jaji's foot suddenly exerted force, and with a bang, the ground of the pier collapsed. Looking again, this guy's figure had disappeared. And Doflamingo's observation hockey has already been turned on. Although the speed of the addition is fast, he has clearly locked the figure of the addition. I saw Doflamingo slipped slightly on his feet, and took 2 steps back. Then, a cold light flashed, and the ground where he was just now was split open with a knife. Gake wearing a Rear Admiral cloak and holding a famous sword, he cut through the air. And the single blow made Jaji a little surprised, but that's all. No further words, the move has changed, from chopping to slashing, with a horizontal knife, and attacked Doflamingo again. At this moment, Doflamingo finally made a move. He moved extremely quickly, but looked very elegant. He closed the parasol in his hand, and then blocked it. With a bang, an ordinary umbrella blocked Jaji's slash. If you underestimate people, there should be a limit, right? How dare you call yourself a Marine with this strength? Doflamingo sneered and mocked. After learning some hockey's power, do you think you are a great powerhouse? Jaji said with his eyes darkened. At the same time as he finished speaking, he exerted a sudden force in his hand, and the blade instantly opened Doflamingo's parasol, and then the cold light burst out, and the long knife in his hand slashed Doflamingo more than 10 times in an instant. But with this wave of shots, Jiaji's expression not only did not relax, but even became more dignified. Not a single hit. Not only him, Sengoku Admiral, who was watching the battle from a distance, also had some surprises in his eyes. To be honest, he couldn't be more aware of Rosinante's talent. As his blood brother, Doflamingo, in the eyes of Sengoku Admiral, probably nothing special either. On the other hand, Jiaji can be said to be a leader among the younger generation of Marine. Sengoku thinks that Jiaji will become Marine's elite vice admiral in the future, which is logical and has no difficulty at all. If this kid works hard, Admiral's position is not impossible. The result is good. Up to now, it has not taken any advantage. On the contrary, it is the Doflamingo, who looks at ease, which shows that its strength is somewhat beyond expectations. Soon, Jiaji's offensive came to an end, and he forcibly missed Doflamingo's knife. At the same time, he stopped his pursuit and decisively pulled a certain distance away from Doflamingo. Sorry, I take back those frivolous and irresponsible words before. Jiaji looked at Doflamingo very seriously and said, "You are very strong." To be honest, Doflamingo was a little surprised by this attitude. Are all you Marines so sincere? But before Doflamingo could speak, Jiaji continued, "Therefore, I will raise my spirits and treat you as an equal opponent. At this moment, I will go all out to defeat you." Hearing this, Doflamingo laughed and said, "Fur, then I should be a little more serious." Immediately, under Jiaji's gaze, Doflamingo slowly twisted the handle of his umbrella, and then, with a light flick, the umbrella body slipped down instantly. At this moment, what Doflamingo was holding in his hand was a long knife. His parasol is special, and there is a knife inside. Without giving Doflamingo the chance to take the lead, Jiaji's eyes flashed a bright light, and the shaving step of one of the 6 styles broke out instantly, closing the distance with Doflamingo at an extremely fast speed. Porpoise style, fangs. In just a split second, Jiaji's slightly fat body appeared in front of Doflamingo. At the same time, his figure was low, and the saber in his hand slashed out obliquely, as if he was about to strike a slash on Doflamingo's body. The imprint of the fangs is the same. Doflamingo's reaction speed is also extremely fast. At the moment when the slash hit, the umbrella blade hockey in his hand wrapped around and accurately blocked the added slash. But the next moment, fierce power came from the blade in his hand. At this time, Jiaji seemed to be no longer a human being. The power he erupted was like a monster. Mountain God. Jiaji shouted violently. The muscles on his arm instantly bulged, and a huge force exploded, and he swung against Doflamingo's umbrella blade. Caught off guard, Doflamingo was directly lifted into the air by this huge force. Seen from the air, Jiaji's movements changed again. He pulled out the second saber hanging from his waist, and the 2 swords formed a cross in front of him, and then armament hockey wrapped around it. For a moment, Doflamingo seemed to see a huge phantom of a wild boar behind Jiaji. Porpoise E. Jiaji locked his eyes on Doflamingo's figure, ready to explode the second pose. But at this moment, he suddenly discovered that Doflamingo, who was forced into the air by him, seemed to be exuding the breath of shadows all over his body. Before he could think about it, Doflamingo's figure suddenly disappeared from the sky. That's right, it didn't disappear, but dissipated like a phantom. Immediately afterwards, Jiaji felt the crisis, and that crisis seemed to come from very close behind him. Shadow of darkness. Just as Jiaji felt, the next moment, the figure of Doflamingo suddenly appeared from the shadow behind Jiaji. The umbrella blade in his hand slashed across Cake's broad back, and blood gushed out instantly. At the moment when Jiaji was about to turn his head back, he felt a cold touch and slight pain on his neck. From the corner of his eye, he glanced down and saw Doflamingo standing behind him holding an umbrella blade, and the blade exuding a lingering aura on the aorta of his neck. "Move and you'll die," Doflamingo said softly. Jiaji was terrified in his heart. What kind of ability is this? Why can it appear from its own shadow? A momentary carelessness caused him to lose easily. Not only him, Sengoku Admiral in the distance also had a look of surprise in his eyes. He thought that Doflamingo was overestimated enough, but unexpectedly, this guy is even stronger than imagined. He is still a capable person. But what was that ability just now? Paramecia Shadow Fruit. The first cut was to open Jiaji's back, and it was to cut a wound on Jiaji's body. In fact, there was such a wound. Judging from the current opacity of information, Jiaji's life and death are in the hands of Doflamingo. The second knife, hanging on his neck, was just a threat, and it was more used to cover up the real purpose of the first knife. Doflamingo looked at Sengoku Admiral after restraining the accusation, and said, "Your Excellency Admiral, can I speak louder now? Marine has never been coerced by anyone, let alone a mere rear admiral. How many rear admirals do you think we have in naval headquarters?" Sengoku replied calmly with a calm expression. It seems that Jaji's life and death are completely ignored. If it weren't for the fact that Doflamingo knew that the talents of Jiaji were highly valued by Marine, he would have almost believed it. After all, he is not well known nowadays, and he is just a Marine rear admiral. As Sengoku said, naval headquarters has 80 or 100 naval headquarters wearing rear admiral epaulets. The number of rear admiral class Marines killed at sea every year is also not in single digits. Use a Marine's rear admiral to threaten Marine. Unless he has some special status, such as a battle hero, a descendant of a martyr, etc., Marine will not compromise. But in fact, what Sengoku said at this time is very correct. If he showed a flustered look that he valued Kaji very much, then he would not be Sengoku Admiral, and the past few decades would be in vain. Fufurfur, you are really indifferent. Is Marine just so impersonal? If it were me, my family, I would definitely save. At all costs. Doflamingo put his hand on the bridge of his nose frame, sneered. Family. Sengoku sneered, and then said, "This, coming from a patricide, is really like a joke." Doflamingo was stunned for a moment, then nodded, and said softly, "That's true." His attitude made Sengoku a little confused. I don't know if it was an illusion. He seemed to feel a kind of remorse and sadness from Doflamingo's emotions just now. But before Sengoku could think about it, Doflamingo lifted his spirits and said, "I still say the same thing. Can I ask you Marines to give you a high hand and let the rest of you go?" Sengoku glanced at Cake, who was being held by the knife, and then said in a deep voice, "We Marines are never coerced by anyone." Doflamingo frowned, but soon, he retracted the knife gracefully, took 2 steps back, let go of Jiaji and said, "How?" Doflamingo's withdrawal has a completely different meaning. If Marine agreed before, it would be a compromise with the enemy, but now it is completely different. The concept is very different. Sengoku Admiral is also evaluating Doflamingo. This guy has very good strength and has already entered the threshold of the strong. Secondly, he is very sophisticated, active in thinking, and very smart. It's a good material, but it's a pity that with his experience and past, it is impossible to join the Marine, and Sengoku himself can never fully trust him. However, it is not impossible to recycle waste. Thinking of this, Sengoku's eyes sank and he said, "In addition to Dr. Vegapunk, there are currently 4 core members of the MADS research team in Cervantes Island." Doflamingo didn't mean to hide anything, nodded and said, "Yes. Judge, Geisa, Quinn, and Ba Jin are indeed the 4 core members here. Then you have a try and see if you are qualified enough to save these 4 people." As soon as Sengoku Admiral finished speaking, he tore the Admiral cloak on his shoulders and threw it on the ground beside him. Doflamingo raised his eyebrows and said, "In the final analysis, do we still have to do it?" However, there was a flash of excitement in his eyes. To put it bluntly, the guy who counted just now was not enough to look at all, and he didn't ignite Doflamingo at all. Judging from the situation just now, Sengoku wanted to weigh him. Although Doflamingo didn't know why Sengoku had such an idea, why didn't he want to use Sengoku, the world's top expert, as a scale to weigh him? What about weighing yourself? To put it a bit arrogantly, Doflamingo doesn't even know how strong he is now. He could feel that Sengoku Admiral's attitude towards him was a bit strange, and he didn't seem to have that kind of murderous intent or particularly strong hostility. It's just that Doflamingo couldn't figure out what Sengoku, the Marine Admiral, was thinking. But it doesn't matter, since you have to fight no matter what, then let's have a good fight. After throwing away the cloak, Sengoku Admiral loosened the bow tie of his suit a little, and said, "Are you ready? Brat." Doflamingo released his observation haki to ultimate, locked onto Sengoku's figure firmly, and said with a defiant smile on the corner of his mouth, "Come on, let me see how powerful the so-called highest combat power is." The moment his voice fell, Sengoku Admiral's figure suddenly disappeared from Doflamingo's sight. It was totally different from Judge's situation where there was a lot of movement, the ground didn't crumble at all, not even a trace of smoke was raised. Observation haki in his brain already felt that a very strong threat was right in front of him. And Doflamingo also saw it at this time. The huge fist pressed haki and attacked his head, and in just an instant, Sengoku had already broken through to his face. But at this moment, the speed of Doflamingo's pupil changes seemed so slow. At this moment, he saw and heard it, but the movements seemed to be unable to keep up. So fast, so fast. Damn it, move. It was also at this moment that Doflamingo finally felt that it wasn't Sengoku's speed that was too fast, but the aura of the old guy and some conquerors emanating from it shocked him, so that he fell into a state of rigidity inside. You can clearly see it, you can hear it, you can feel it, but you can't move. This top-level combat experience seems to have broken some of Doflamingo's previous cognitions in an instant. It turns out that combat can still have these skills. And Sengoku also felt the situation of Doflamingo at the moment, and said with emotion in his heart, maybe this kid has good talent and potential, and his strength is also impressive, but after all, he is not experienced enough. He was afraid that he would not be able to block his blow, so he could only catch it with his head. It was too late to say, but it was so fast at that time, there were thousands of thoughts in my heart, and reality was only a moment. At the moment when Sengoku's thoughts fell, the situation suddenly changed. A powerful aura suddenly burst out from Doflamingo's body, completely dissipating the deterrent force carried by Sengoku's punch. Conquerors. Sengoku wondered inwardly. Doflamingo didn't have much information when he was young. The fact that he awakened the conquerors was indeed not within the scope of Marine's intelligence collection, because it was unnecessary at the time, and even now, among Marine, there is no information about Doflamingo. Not much, after all, he is not a pirate. So Sengoku really didn't know that this guy Doflamingo could still break out conquerors. However, it was still too late. Although the explosion of the conquerors allowed Doflamingo to move freely, but at this moment the punch was in front of him, and it was impossible for Doflamingo to avoid the blow with his speed. I can't hide, and I don't want to hide. When Sengoku's punch was about to stick to Doflamingo's head, a force of armament hockey had already dyed Doflamingo's forehead black. Immediately, the headbutt hit the fist, and with a bang, Hockey's hedge exploded. Then, the hedge collapsed in an instant, and Doflamingo's figure, like a cannonball, was directly sent flying by Sengoku's punch. It was useless, with Hockey protecting his head, at most it reduced the force and impact, but Doflamingo still couldn't block Sengoku's punch with his head, and was still sent flying. Sengoku, who punched Doflamingo, didn't stop at all. He stomped his foot, and this time it was considered to be a bit of smoke, and the tall and strong figure disappeared in place again. When it appeared, it had already reached the top of Doflamingo. At this moment, Doflamingo hadn't completely digested the impact just now, and the whole person was flying upside down close to the ground. The moment Sengoku appeared, he directly pressed Doflamingo's body with one hand, and forced him to the ground, stopping the figure. Then, the other hand was raised high, and with Hockey's strength, it slammed down hard. This posture is to put Doflamingo on the ground and hammer it. Boom. With a loud noise, the ground exploded, and a large amount of smoke exploded instantly, completely covering the surrounding area. Amidst the smoke and dust, Sengoku's expression was slightly surprised, because this punch was empty. Doflamingo, who was originally pressed to the ground by himself, disappeared. Then, his peripheral vision swept around, and a large number of bats flew out from his hands. Not surprisingly, this is Doflamingo's ability again. The moment the punch landed just now, Doflamingo's body was shattered, suddenly transformed into a large group of black bats, and broke free from Sengoku's shackles. Soon, the smoke cleared, and Sengoku Admiral stood up very casually, and looked not far away, where a large number of bats gradually gathered together, and then merged into the figure of Doflamingo. This is one of Doflamingo's abilities, batification. From eating this devil fruit to now, Doflamingo has always felt that the vampire fruit seems to be focusing on an immortality. The first round is to absorb vitality, through the huge vitality reserves, to achieve effects such as high-speed regeneration. In the second round, it was such a bat transformation. At the moment of being attacked, Doflamingo was able to directly transform his body into hundreds of bats, avoiding the attack by breaking them into pieces. And this is not the most powerful thing. The most powerful thing is that he can also use this trick when he is running. As long as he can escape with a bat alive, he will not die or be caught. It's really a weird ability. At first, I thought you were the shadow fruit ability user of Paramecia, but looking at it now, those bats just now were not transformed by the energy of shadows, but real creatures. Sengoku Admiral also looked at Doflamingo with a hint of curiosity on his face. Of course, perhaps going back to check the information, Sengoku Admiral can quickly deduce Doflamingo's ability, or maybe, in the subsequent fights, with the continuous use and exposure of his own ability, he can also guess it. But anyway, Doflamingo didn't mean to explain to him. Explaining his ability, in the absence of an absolute advantage, can be used to pretend. Isn't that an act of cerebral palsy? Seeing that Doflamingo didn't intend to speak, Sengoku didn't say any more. The two were silent for a moment, looking at each other. The next moment, Doflamingo moved. This time, Doflamingo took the lead. It has been proved just now that once Sengoku makes the first move, it is even difficult for him to fight back, so this time, he has to make the first move. His speed was not slow either. In an instant, Doflamingo appeared in front of Sengoku, and the umbrella blade in his hand directly pierced Sengoku's throat. Sengoku's observation haki is also locking Doflamingo, and with the speed shown by Doflamingo, it is not impossible for a top player like him to keep up. So I watched Sengoku wrap haki in his hand and grab it very accurately towards Doflamingo's umbrella blade. Accurate indeed, as Sengoku locks the blade in one go, making it difficult for Doflamingo to penetrate. But it didn't matter at all. When Sengoku grabbed the umbrella blade, he had already discovered that the guy Doflamingo was gone. Obviously, Doflamingo didn't mean to confront Sengoku head-on with this move at all, it was just a feint. In the next instant, Doflamingo's figure has emerged from the shadow behind Sengoku. And at this moment, Sengoku, who had always been very calm, had a frightened look on his face, and a rare flustered look. Then, Sengoku dodges Doflamingo's attack by leaping forward. That's right, dodged. In fact, Sengoku was able to withstand Doflamingo's attack directly just now. With his haki power, it is impossible for Doflamingo to break through in an instant. In fact, Sengoku himself also planned this way. At first, he planned to block it hard, but when he discovered Doflamingo's ultimate move, he changed it to dodge without a word. It was because of a switch during this period that he was slightly embarrassed. You bastard, how can you be so despicable? Sengoku turned around, looked at Doflamingo, and cursed angrily. How can fighting be despicable? Doflamingo put away his 1,000 years of death gesture and said very calmly. That's right, if the old guy didn't hide just now and broke his finger, Doflamingo would give him a spiral ascension. Not to mention, Doflamingo's response made Sengoku speechless. Indeed, how can fighting be mean? Let's fight and attack you in the next 3 lanes, just to win the chance, it's reasonable. Just when Sengoku was about to say something, Doflamingo attacked again. He quickly got close to Sengoku's side, then wrapped his arms around haki, and bombarded Sengoku at a very fast speed. Sengoku's reaction is also very fast, completely defusing Doflamingo's offensive with very skilled skills. No matter what angle Doflamingo hits from, Sengoku can defend it. After just 3 or 5 breaths, Sengoku grabbed Doflamingo's arms, looked at him and said, "What are you hiding? What are you hiding? Since the fight, you have only used your abilities a few times. Is it because you have hidden some ultimate move in your ability, and you don't want to leak information to this old man? If you come to fight this old man with this mentality of hiding your hand, you are too arrogant, right? Brat." At the same time as the voice fell, Sengoku slammed his knee on Doflamingo's chest. The force of this knee blow was so strong that Doflamingo's ribs broke instantly, followed by a mouthful of dirty blood. At the same time, Sengoku let go of the hands holding Doflamingo, and the force that followed immediately engulfed Doflamingo, rolled on the ground more than a dozen times, and hit a ruined wharf before stopping his figure. Looking at Doflamingo, who was severely injured by the blow, Sengoku snorted coldly and said, "Before this old man, I had a little high opinion of you. I thought this guy could give me some surprises, but in the end, he dared to hide it when he fought against Marine Admiral. What does this mean? Playing Sengoku like a monkey, right? Do you think I'm acting with you? If it wasn't for Rosinante's sake, Sengoku would have killed Doflamingo just now." Among the rocks in the ruins, Doflamingo was leaning here at this time, and every time he took a breath, he could bring blood foam from his nasal cavity, which proved that his injuries were extremely serious. Not only his ribs were broken, but also his internal organs were severely damaged. Trauma, already bleeding internally. Indeed, Doflamingo is still a little, not letting go. He is always worried about whether he should hide his hand. After all, it is impossible for him to kill Sengoku here, so once he fully uses his ability, it will undoubtedly be harmful to Marine. An information leak. In this case, if he fights against Marine in the future, some of his advantages will be gone. But as Sengoku Admiral said, it would be a bit too arrogant to fight against him and still want to hide one hand. And in this short fight, Doflamingo also gradually understood some truths and his own ideas. Why did he want to hide his hand? The answer is fear and lack of self-confidence. It was as if he instinctively felt that if he didn't hide his hand, he would not be able to win when facing Marine in the future. From the very beginning, he seemed to have avoided the option of upright, and always thought of devious ways. Perhaps it can be said that it is for the sake of victory and unscrupulous means, but it does also represent his fear and lack of self-confidence. This is the answer he got from his body and mind in this battle. It's so funny. I thought I had no scruples, but in fact, have I been afraid in my heart? Fear to face the heroes of this sea. Doflamingo whispered softly, with a somewhat smug tone, self-deprecating. Holding a kind of arrogant idea of becoming the king of the world. But deep in my heart, I am afraid of the heroes and powerhouses in this sea. This kind of contradictory mentality is really sad. Today's Sengoku taught him a very important truth about Doflamingo. Perhaps this was not Sengoku's original intention, but Doflamingo did understand a lot. That is, to become a top powerhouse, one does not rely on the power of hockey, fruit, or fighting skills or physical skills. These are all unnecessary. There are too many people who can resist and fight with the powerful hockey and the mysterious fruit power in the hands of the sea. But not all of them can become real top masters, heroes and powerhouses in this sea. And those who can look down on the world, the only thing they have in common is that heart. Never give up, never give up. Foo-fur-fur-fur-fur. Doflamingo laughed. He looked at Sengoku Admiral in the distance and said, "Sooner or later, you will regret it." Sengoku. In Sengoku's confused eyes, he didn't quite understand what the kid was talking about. The figure of Doflamingo slowly stood up from the ruins. His chest injury was recovering at an extremely fast speed. "I regret that today I have recognized my weakness and fear," Doflamingo murmured softly. At this moment, Doflamingo's eyes were extremely clear. Seeing Doflamingo's injury that had recovered to its original state, Sengoku's eyes also showed some seriousness. There is a generally accepted truth in this sea, that is, opponents with strong self-healing power are often very difficult to deal with. This is what Doflamingo is showing at the moment. As a result, Sengoku's eyes also became a little dignified. Is it the fruit ability again? Sengoku analyzed in his mind. Bats, shadows, self-healing power. Why do they feel so familiar? Before Sengoku could think about anything here, Doflamingo said in a deep voice, "Sengoku Admiral, do a self-examination. I was too arrogant before, and I couldn't recognize myself. Marine Admiral fights." Sengoku frowned slightly, looking at Doflamingo. He always felt that this guy seemed different from before. The previous Doflamingo was sophisticated, smart, cunning, and had some strength. But that's all. But at this time, Sengoku instinctively sensed a trace of threat from Doflamingo. Although it was only a trace, it proved that there was indeed something wrong with this kid. Doflamingo paused for a moment, then looked at Sengoku very seriously and said, "From now on, this battle has no other purpose, and I will do my best, with all my strength to defeat you." Although Sengoku felt the changes in Doflamingo in his heart, he was unmoved on the surface, and said very calmly, "Do you think a miracle will happen if you say a few harsh words and correct your attitude?" But as soon as Sengoku Admiral's words fell, Doflamingo had already charged him directly. At this moment, Doflamingo no longer had any reservations, nor did he have the slightest intention to hide his ability. He went all out and moved extremely fast. At the first glance, Doflamingo was moving, and at the second glance, Doflamingo had already arrived in front of Sengoku. With the third glance, Doflamingo reached for Sengoku's chest with both hands. Fast is extremely fast, but with Sengoku's strength and experience, how could he not be able to respond? In just a moment, Sengoku's arms brought up armament hockey, blocked Doflamingo's offensive twice, and at the same time leaned forward one step, taking a step closer to Doflamingo more actively. Opening Doflamingo's arms, the empty door in front of Doflamingo is wide open, and Sengoku's one hand has already emitted a little golden light and shockwaves. There is no fancy name, this blow came extremely fast and very swiftly, and it poured on Doflamingo's chest with a bang. But before the powerful impact could take effect, Doflamingo's body exploded to pieces. This time it wasn't a bat anymore, his whole body instantly turned into a mass of blood-red mist. Elementalization. Sengoku pierced through the blood mist with a blow, his eyes surprised. But in just a split second, he realized that this was not elementalization. Marine has many Logia-capable users, especially Sakazuki, Kuzan, and Paluzolino. Sengoku also took care of them, so he is naturally very familiar with the feeling of elementalization. Although this ability is very similar to elementalization, it is not. What's more, his strike is not pure ability, but also has the power of hockey. With Sengoku's level, how could it be possible for the opponent to take the initiative to elementalize in this situation? Before Sengoku figured out what was going on, the blood mist quickly condensed and turned into Doflamingo again in the blink of an eye. Doflamingo, who received a powerful blow from Sengoku head-on, felt unscathed at this time. However, Sengoku was keenly aware that the moment Doflamingo reappeared, his face turned unnaturally pale for a moment, and then quickly returned to rosy. That's right. This ability to transform into blood mist is naturally the fruit ability that Doflamingo has pondered. The reason is that Doflamingo feels that it is not convenient to wear a parasol all day long. The sun is covered. So, he atomized the blood in his body, released a cloud of blood mist that could block the sun, and put it on his head. This is the cause, but after thinking about it, Doflamingo wondered, can this ability work on himself? Isn't it cool to be like Logia? Not to mention, it's really possible. Without encountering any threshold, Doflamingo quickly discovered this trick. The first step is to convert all of its basic structures, that is, flesh, bones, etc., into blood in an instant. This point, Doflamingo's ability can easily do it. It seems that as long as it is related to blood, he has no threshold. The second step is to atomize the blood, which is very simple, almost the same as the awakened blood shaping ability at the beginning. After many times of repeated practice, Doflamingo can do the current situation, turning himself into a blood mist in an instant. However, receiving Sengoku's offensive was not without damage at all. The blood mist that was completely destroyed by Sengoku's punch bombardment evaporated, and naturally disappeared. But Doflamingo's hematopoietic ability is extremely strong, so he can recover to the peak in just one breath. It can be said that this move can greatly prevent the damage that the enemy should have caused. Without further ado, Doflamingo attacked again and pounced on Sengoku. The two clashed again, but it was obvious that Doflamingo was not a little bit worse than Sengoku, the experienced Marine Admiral, in this frontal offensive. Almost every 10 or 20 seconds, Sengoku can blow him up once. If Doflamingo's resilience, vitality and life-saving skills are not amazing, if it is an ordinary person who is at the same level as him, he should have been cleaned up by Sengoku long ago lost. But Sengoku didn't feel relaxed because of Doflamingo's weakness, because after just a few minutes of fighting, he could clearly feel that Doflamingo's rhythm was gradually optimizing. As a top player, Sengoku naturally understands what is going on. This means that Doflamingo's own strength is indeed very good and cannot be considered weak, but his combat experience is very poor, or in other words, his combat experience with the top masters in the sea is almost zero. So even if he has 100% strength, but when facing himself, he can't show it. But at this moment, relying on his strong ability to resist pressure and recover, this kid is ripening these experiences at an incredible speed, and he is his whetstone. A swift and violent shockwave exploded from Sengoku's hand. At this moment, Doflamingo failed to avoid the blow, and his entire left arm was blown to pieces, with flesh and blood flying around. At the same time, Sengoku also felt a slight tingling pain on his arm. Looking out of the corner of his eye, it turned out that Doflamingo had to cut a shallow wound on his arm with his nails at the cost of being bombed. It was also at this moment that Doflamingo, whose arm was blown off, not only did not show pain on his face, but his eyes radiated a bloodthirsty light. Sengoku vaguely sensed something was wrong from his expression. Finally, "Hurt you, Sengoku Admiral?" Doflamingo grinned and said with a cruel and bloodthirsty smile. Sengoku was a little puzzled. "It was just a little skin scratch. It made you feel like you ripped me open. Why are you so excited?" But before Sengoku opened his mouth to mock Doflamingo, the next moment, he saw a red light flashing on Doflamingo's body, and his aura was completely different. A pair of huge bat wings burst out from behind Doflamingo. It was also the change of the pair of bat wings and form that made Sengoku certain that this kid is 100% Zone's ability user. In order to seize this unique and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Doflamingo instantly spread his abilities, and in the best condition, aimed at Sengoku's insignificant, broken skin wound that had begun to heal, and used his own ability. Blood siphon. Doflamingo roared. A strange energy erupted from his hand, instantly covering Sengoku's wound. And Sengoku also felt bad at this moment. He is an ability user of Zone, and also a phantom beast. Although he does not have pervert self-healing ability, his recovery ability is indeed far superior to ordinary people. Sengoku can clearly feel the wound that was scraped just now, and it is already beginning to heal. But at this moment, the wound seemed to be uncontrollable. It was torn apart, forming a finger-long slit, and Sengoku was sure that it was an injury caused from within his body. Immediately afterwards, as if a high-pressure water gun was gushing wantonly, the blood in his body burst out from the wound in an instant, and was captured by Doflamingo. Instinctively, Sengoku covered his wound, trying to stop the blood loss. But it was useless at all. There was still a lot of blood gushing out from between his fingers. After just 1 or 2 breaths, Sengoku Admiral's face became extremely pale, and sweat dripped from his forehead. And Doflamingo's expression also became serious. Normally, it only takes him a moment to drain the blood of an ordinary person, but facing Sengoku, 2 breaths failed to drain his blood. Not only that, but at this time, the blood could not even be pumped. The reason is also very simple. At this time, Sengoku Admiral's open wound is attached to the rich haki, and the ability to apply Doflamingo to his wound is completely isolated. It has to be said that it was Marine Admiral, the world's top player. Although he was not aware of it for a while and was drained of a lot of blood by Doflamingo, he also used an extremely correct response method at the first time. I also have to say that Sengoku has so much blood that he is worthy of being a Phantom Beast capable user. At this time, around Doflamingo, like a red silk, there was a torrent of blood flowing back and forth, and all of this blood belonged to Sengoku. To be honest, before coming to North Blue, before playing against Doflamingo, Sengoku never imagined that he would suffer such a big loss. His aura does feel a little weak, even if it is Zone's Phantom Beast ability user. Nearly half of the blood in his body is taken away in an instant, and it is unbearable for anyone else. Shadow. Blood. Super self-healing power. Bat, I should have thought of it. Sengoku looked at Doflamingo in the distance with a gloomy face, and then said in a deep voice, "You guy. Is it Zone, Batfruit Phantom Beast, and a vampire-capable user?" Doflamingo didn't say anything, and nodded directly. "That's right. It's really a powerful ability. If it weren't for me being a Zone-capable user, I'm afraid this momentary mistake would have resulted in a defeat," Sengoku said with serious eyes. But Doflamingo didn't take it seriously. How could a top player like Sengoku be defeated casually? Even if he wasn't a Zone-capable user, he wouldn't have been killed so easily, otherwise, this top expert would be too worthless. Is it true that Marine Admiral's title of highest combat power was picked up? At the same time, on the upper floors of Miguel Castle, Virgo was observing the battlefield with the binoculars in hand. When he saw Doflamingo using his ability and almost giving Sengoku, the Marine Admiral, to Crimson Harvest in an instant, his eyelids jumped. Then, he put down the binoculars. His tone was a little helpless, a little reluctant, and a little heavy, but he still said very firmly, "Diamante, follow the plan and start to transfer and evacuate family members, important partners, important goods, and materials." Hearing this, Diamante said with some seriousness in his eyes, "Cervantes. Depending on the situation after the war, maybe it can be rebuilt." Virgo responded with a complicated tone. "That's right. Doflamingo has foreseen the end of the Mads team since he knew that the blood factor theory was published, and he is naturally very clear that if he wants to keep Quinn, Geisa and others, the conflict with the world government is inevitable. So there is a high possibility that Cervantes will become a battlefield. So before that, the Donquixote family had already prepared several plans to deal with this conflict. One of them has very heavy consequences. That is, when Doflamingo no longer hides his abilities and starts to go all out, it means that the intensity of this war will rise to the highest level for the Donquixote family. The so-called superlative means that Cervantes will be abandoned and become Doflamingo's flesh and blood battlefield. Except for the family members and important partners, mentioned by Virgo just now, who will be transferred out, everyone on the rest of the island will be abandoned. It's going to be Doflamingo's blood bag. Doflamingo will be here in Cervantes, with the blood and vitality of tens of thousands of Cervantes as the source, and Sengoku, the Marine Admiral, will fight to the end. Cervantes will not stop this fight until the last drop of blood is shed. Guy on the side heard the conversation, and said in surprise, "But Marine has blocked all Cervantes ports, how to evacuate?" Diamante smiled and said, "Look, Your Excellency Judge wouldn't ask such a question." Judge nodded and said, "The reason why I must run to Cervantes after seeing Marine is because those of us who hang out in the dark world must have dark ports and submarines on the island. Yes, we have observed the Marine fleet, and there is no submarine force, so coming to Cervantes means that there is a chance to escape this hunt." Soon, the people in the castle began to evacuate in an orderly manner. Members of the Donquixote family, with some important materials, goods, and collections, entered the underground dark port of the island through the secret passage in the castle. A large number of ships and submarines were moored in the here. Everyone quickly boarded the ship and began to evacuate. On the other hand, neither Sengoku nor Doflamingo made any more moves. Doflamingo knew very well that Sengoku was already on high alert against him at this time. To be honest, it was wishful thinking to defeat Sengoku head-on as Marine Admiral here. Phantom Beasts are very powerful. Just kidding, man, Sengoku Admiral is not a Phantom Beast. It was nothing more than taking advantage of the opaque intelligence once to gain the upper hand. Doflamingo was not inflated enough to think that he could win against Marine Admiral in this kind of frontal battlefield. Therefore, Doflamingo's expectation is not to be defeated, or in a short time, not to be defeated. The longer the delay, the better. "I don't do anything, I'm restoring my strength and the lost blood. If you don't do it, what are you waiting for?" Sengoku stared at Doflamingo and said softly. He was indeed a little puzzled. Logically speaking, after finally injuring himself once, shouldn't Doflamingo pursue the victory? Why did this guy stop? At this moment, a bright red firework suddenly exploded over Miguel Castle. After seeing the fireworks, Doflamingo said with a complicated expression, "I'm waiting for this signal." The detonation of the flare meant that Virgo and the others had safely evacuated. In other words, he, Doflamingo, has no scruples on this island of Cervantes. Signal. Sengoku Admiral's rapid analysis of thoughts in his head. What does this mean? Does this Doflamingo guy still have a backup? Is it reinforcements, or something else? But before Sengoku Admiral analyzed anything, he saw a bat wing on Doflamingo's back, flapped it twice, and took him to fly over the island. Sengoku was a little puzzled by Doflamingo's behavior, but he didn't pursue him under the unknown circumstances. At this time, he should give priority to recovering his physical strength. On the island and in the towns, many Cervantes people are very puzzled. What is the situation? What is flying in the sky? Why is it a bit like the young master of the Donquixote family? The battle at the dockport seems to have come to an end? Yeah, there's been no movement for a long time. What's the situation now? Huh. Where's the Donquixote family? Didn't they still form a defense line here just now? Did not notice. I went to the castle just now, and said it was a scheduling change. Then is the fight over now? Who is Master Doflamingo fighting with? There seems to be quite a lot of movement. Who knows? At this moment, the torrent of blood circling around Doflamingo abruptly flew out of the air and entered the town. What's that? An unlucky ghost pointed to the red torrent in the sky. In the next second, the torrent pierced him instantly, piercing through his chest and bursting out from his back, and when the torrent of blood left his body, this unlucky ghost turned into a mummy and fell to the ground. It shattered on the spot. And that torrent of blood seemed to swell a circle, and the blood contained in it became more intense and manic. Ah! The crowd panicked and howled, and Guy ran away. But it was useless. The blood was raging in the town, and no one was spared wherever it passed, but anyone who was caught up by the blood would be drained of blood in an instant and become a dead person. At first, it was just a thick blood flow like a python, but within 2 minutes, the city had already turned into hell. The torrent had gathered the blood of tens of thousands of people and turned into a torrent. At the beginning, Sengoku didn't understand what kind of moth Doflamingo was messing with. But it was too fast, and by the time he realized it, more than half of the people in Cervantes town had been slaughtered by Doflamingo. The torrent of blood has turned into a raging torrent. What did you do? Sengoku Admiral roared, demanding Doflamingo in the sky. Why are you so angry? Sengoku Admiral. For you Marines, there is no innocent person on Cervantes Island. Don't forget, this is the evil of North Blue. Doflamingo stood in the sky, indifferently looked at Sengoku and said. Sengoku froze for a moment. It seems that it is not unreasonable for you to say that. There really isn't a single good person on Cervantes Island, so they took out the law code, arrested people one by one, and pronounced sentences. It is estimated that 9 of the 10 were sentenced to death, and 1 was sentenced to death. But having said that, look at this bastard Doflamingo. He has slaughtered most of the town in a flash. The disregard for life in his bones, the viciousness, the brutality, still made Sengoku very angry. Dare to massacre the city today, who knows what he will do even more heinous things tomorrow. It seems that it was also at this moment that Sengoku finally saw the evil and darkness in Doflamingo's body that was so thick that it could not be resolved. Seeing Sengoku Admiral's uncertain expression, the corners of Doflamingo's mouth raised, with a touch of evil and tyranny. When I don't use my abilities very much, you say I'm too arrogant, and after I go all out, you are so angry. You Marines are really troublesome. Doflamingo, you. Sengoku was about to say something. But Doflamingo wasn't ready to listen. At the same time as Sengoku spoke, Doflamingo suddenly raised his hand, and the torrent of blood spreading in the town rose up like a pillar reaching the sky. When the turbulent blood column reached a certain height, Doflamingo squeezed his palm suddenly and shouted, "In the blood mist." The blood column that soared into the sky seemed to be crushed and burst by an invisible big hand, and it collapsed in the air. At an extremely fast speed, it turned into an extremely thick blood mist and spread rapidly. First, the sky above the town, and then, the entire island. In just a moment, the whole of Cervantes was enveloped in this weird, cruel blood mist, and he couldn't see anything. In the blood mist, Sengoku looked at the thick blood red mist that filled his surroundings, and was constantly making judgments. First of all, the line of sight is greatly blocked, and secondly, observation haki is also affected. It's not that observation haki is suppressed, on the contrary, there is no such thing at all. Observation haki is a kind of listening, hearing the voice of one's opponent, but at this moment, in the whole blood mist, the noisy is extremely loud, as if every drop of blood fog, all have their own voice. So this effect is not to suppress observation haki, but to increase the difficulty of observation haki to analyze the situation. It only needs to process one piece of information, but now it needs to process 100, 1,000 pieces of information. Not only Sengoku's observation haki, but also for Doflamingo. But what he has an advantage over Sengoku is that this is his home field, so even without observation haki, Doflamingo can see everything in the blood mist just by relying on the perception of the blood mist. From extremely quiet to extremely dynamic, it's just a moment. As if sensing something, Sengoku Admiral punched into the blood mist ahead. Sure enough, Doflamingo's figure appeared there in the next moment. Armament haki exploded from both arms, and collided with Sengoku's fist. But he was indeed no match for Sengoku in terms of haki's strength, and in an instant, the haki on his arm was defeated, and then, Sengoku's fist pressed Doflamingo's arms and slammed on Doflamingo's chest. After being repelled by dozens of steps, Doflamingo lost his strength. But Sengoku, who had the upper hand in one blow, had an unhappy expression, because he found that at the moment Doflamingo was injured, the thick blood mist poured into Doflamingo's wound crazily as if he had his own consciousness. From the shot to the end, Doflamingo was obviously hit in the process, but in the end he was intact. This blood mist seems to be the source of Doflamingo's life, continuously supporting his battle. To be reasonable, Sengoku just feels very toothache at the moment. Judging from the current performance of Doflamingo's ability, I don't know if he has not used it, or it has not been developed, or what. In short, the aggressiveness is not strong, and it can even be said to be lacking. The blood-sucking blood sucked out a large amount of blood in his body in one breath. After that and before, Doflamingo's attack did not cause any damage to Sengoku at all. In fact, it is true. So far, Doflamingo's development of fruit abilities and aggressiveness are really not very high. Focus on an immortality, and Sengoku also felt it at this time. Although Doflamingo's aggressiveness has not yet been shown, its degree of difficulty is already obvious. This guy immune to death. Just when Sengoku was thinking about how to break the game, suddenly, the blood mist around him moved. Blood prison. Doflamingo's voice came from the thick blood mist. Then, around Sengoku, a large amount of blood mist converged towards him. When the mist became thicker than ultimate, it merged together to form blood water. For a moment, like a water prison, a large amount of blood wrapped Sengoku in it, as if he wanted to imprison him and drown him. Sengoku, who was soaked in blood, had a fierce light in his eyes, and the next moment, a brilliant golden light burst out. Sengoku Admiral, who is also a phantom beast, also went crazy, turned into a golden Buddha, roaring and blasting the blood prison that imprisoned him. In the distance, on the warship, Marine's watchman could vaguely see, on the Cervantes island shrouded in blood mist, a faint golden light was erupting and flickering. Whenever Sengoku's ability wiped out some blood mist, in certain corners and ruins of Cervantes, the blood mist would swallow up the previous survivors and replenish blood. Doflamingo, on the other hand, continues to attack Sengoku from various aspects. It has to be said that Sengoku should be very angry at this time, so every time Doflamingo attacks, Sengoku will be severely injured by Sengoku's fierce offensive. But in just a split second, Doflamingo was able to replenish enough vitality from the blood mist to recover from his injuries. Again, until the last drop of Cervantes' blood is shed, Doflamingo will not fall. As time passed, Doflamingo's offensive became more and more fierce, and so did Sengoku, the Marine Admiral. Two top Phantom Beast ability users fought crazily in this blood fog. Judging from the scene, the two seem to be evenly matched, but if you look closely, you will find that Sengoku has the overwhelming advantage in terms of offense. But, no matter how he fights, Doflamingo can stand it. On the surface, Sengoku, the Admiral, seems to have lost his mind. Knowing that Doflamingo has almost immortal body characteristics, he is still beating him like crazy here. But in fact, Sengoku, who is the resourceful general, has already analyzed the situation of Doflamingo in all aspects. 28th time. Sengoku counted silently in his heart. During the fight, no matter what kind of damage he caused to Doflamingo, he would not avoid it. Only when he attacked Doflamingo's heart area, this guy would dodge, and in these hundreds of fights, he used dodge to deal with his attacks on his heart area. What does this mean? This shows that the heart is the key to Doflamingo's immortal body. See the future. A gleam flashed in Sengoku's eyes, as if he had seen through this short future. The next moment, he grabbed Doflamingo's arm violently, and at the same time, a strong momentum erupted from his body. It is the Conqueror's haki, the justice that reigns supreme. Although Doflamingo also owns Conquerors, at this moment, his mind seems to go blank. His body movements are also sluggish. Then, when he got through this wave of deterrence, he saw that Sengoku had turned his fist into a claw, punched him in the heart with a sudden blow. What a skill! Heihu took his heart out. Sengoku changed his moves so quickly this time, coupled with the fierceness of the shot, that Doflamingo couldn't resist at all. Judging from the slow motion, it is Sengoku's claws entangled with Haki. Under Doflamingo's horrified expression, quickly and accurately, it is on his heart. The skin was broken first, and then the ribs were broken, blood and flesh flew everywhere. In the end, one of Sengoku's hands sank into Doflamingo's chest cavity. Cough. When Doflamingo came back to his senses, a mouthful of live blood spewed out of his mouth. But what is surprising is that the Marine Admiral, Sengoku, clearly stabbed Doflamingo's heart, but his expression was very surprised, with an unbelievable look on his face. Your heart. Sengoku looked up from Doflamingo's heart, and looked into Doflamingo's eyes. Doflamingo looked embarrassed, as if he had been severely injured, but there was a smile on the corner of his mouth and said, as expected of Marine Admiral, can you detect the weakness of my heart in this short fight? But, since here as if it is weak, how can I not prepare early? At the same time as the voice fell, the bat wings behind Doflamingo flapped and pulled him directly, and retreated from the heart of Sengoku's black tiger. At this time, Sengoku's arm was dripping with blood, there was the dregs of Doflamingo's broken ribs, and the torn fascia, but there was no heart. That's right. Sengoku seized the opportunity to make a lore move, and after entering Doflamingo's body, he found that this bastard has no heart. At this moment, in a dark cave on the mountain behind Cervantes, a blood-red bat was hanging upside down on the top of the cave wall. If you look closely, the blood-colored bat looks like a heart, and its entire body is beating very powerfully. That's right, from when Doflamingo decided to write Sengoku's bloody battle to the end. He decided to transfer his weakness out of his body. In the blood mist, through the blood, it is connected with Doflamingo's will, so in this blood mist, Doflamingo can take out his heart from the body, turn into a bat, and hide it. Many functions of the heart will be connected with Doflamingo through the blood mist, which will not affect the performance of various abilities of Doflamingo. Thick blood mist poured into the wound on Doflamingo's heart, and within a short moment, under Sengoku's watchful eye, his wound was fully recovered. Watching this scene, Sengoku's mood is quite depressed. Is Doflamingo strong? From the perspective of strength, it can only be said that it is not weak, but it is said that it is strong. For a top master like Sengoku, there is no pressure at all to kill him within 100 moves. Judging by the rank of generals within Marine, Sengoku can give Doflamingo an elite vice admiral evaluation, and it is the kind that can touch the admiral threshold. However, although Doflamingo's strength is not so extraordinary, the ability to return this guy is really tricky. This is the first time for Sengoku to meet Doflamingo, also the first time to play against Doflamingo, and the first time to know Doflamingo's ability. Therefore, the lack of intelligence made Sengoku completely unprepared, whether it was tactical or strategic. So until now, although Sengoku can be regarded as having the upper hand and advantage, but there is nothing that can be done with Doflamingo. You bastard, immune to death, what can you do? Not only Sengoku is having a hard time, but Cake, who has returned to the warship at this time, is also having a hard time. At the beginning, he thought that he lost to Doflamingo due to his carelessness, but now it seems that even if he tried his best, he might not be the opponent of Doflamingo. If you haven't watched Sengoku Admiral, why don't you use him? Originally, Jiaji also wanted to ambush on the island, and when the time is right, he will cooperate with Sengoku Admiral to get rid of Doflamingo. But soon, when the blood mist erupted, he found that the wounds on his body were continuously spilling blood mist outwards, which could not be stopped at all. It seemed that there was a strange power hidden in the blood mist. Assimilate all flesh and blood creatures. Therefore, after careful consideration, we decided to withdraw first. Staying here will only hinder Sengoku Admiral. The battle on the island seemed to break out after a pause for a while. Jiaji could vaguely see that in the blood mist, there was a golden Buddha roaring, and sometimes a rapid shock wave would burst out, filling the sails of the warships outside the harbor. He is very clear that this is Sengoku Admiral's ability, but it can also be seen from this that even if Sengoku Admiral goes all out, it seems that there is nothing he can do about Doflamingo in a short time. After observing carefully for a while, Jiaji found that the blood mist that seemed to shroud Cervantes Island was slightly thinner. That's all, but overall, it's still very scary, weird, and full-bodied. If Jiaji hadn't been paying attention and paid special attention to this aspect, he wouldn't have found out. Just when Jiaji was thinking about this, the phone bug, blue brew brew, on his body rang. Jiaji quickly picked up the phone and said, "Great staff. What's the matter? Look at the report sent by your fleet this morning. You should have arrived at Cervantes by now, right? Has the MADS research team successfully captured it? Why can't Sengoku's phone bug signal get through? The voice of General Staff Suru came from the phone bug. Jia swallowed his saliva in embarrassment, and then said, "The mission target Dr. Vegapunk has been captured, but the MADS research team fled to Cervantes Island. As for why the phone bug of Sengoku Admiral cannot get through, probably because he is currently engaged in a fierce battle with Donquixote Doflamingo on Cervantes Island." Fierce battle. General Staff Suru was stunned for a moment and said, "Doflamingo is qualified to fight with Sengoku." Jia's expression darkened, and he said in a very serious tone, "We have underestimated Donquixote Doflamingo too much before. The chief staff officer, we can say that we know very little about Doflamingo's information. That guy is a capable buy. Even if he is an ability user, with Sengoku's strength, there shouldn't be any surprises, right?" Chief Staff Officer Suru's tone was also a little strange. Sengoku is a Marine Admiral. Although Sengoku has never been famous for his ability to fight and strength, he is famous for his resourcefulness, strategy, and tactics. He is known as the resourceful General Ren. But should it be said that those who can sit in Admiral's position are weak? Who was Donquixote Doflamingo? He was only 20 years old, a smuggler who started his career in North Blue, a guy who can't see the light in the dark world. How can he be able to fight Sengoku fiercely? Indeed, judging from the battle situation, it can be said that Sengoku Admiral has caused fatal injuries to Doflamingo many times, but Donquixote Doflamingo is a zone phantom beast. He has the ability of a vampire, and his life form is very strange. Strong immortality and regenerative self-healing ability. Jia soon began to report the current situation in detail to the chief staff officer. He slaughtered all the people on Cervantes Island. He turned it into his own blood mist. He continuously provided a strong vitality, and by virtue of this immortality, he was fighting Sengoku, asked Chief Staff Officer Suru. It should be like this. With Sengoku Admiral's continuous heavy damage to Doflamingo, although the changes are very subtle, I can be sure that the blood fog covering Cervantes Island is indeed a little weaker. If you can't find a suitable response to the method, then I am afraid, if you want to completely defeat Doflamingo, you need Sengoku Admiral to consume all the blood mist on the island. In other words, you need Sengoku Admiral to continuously kill. Severely injures Doflamingo until the blood mist dries up, and his self-healing power and resilience cannot be exerted. Jia analyzed. After thinking about it, Jia couldn't help but said, "The ability of this phantom beast devil fruit is really terrifying. No, it's just that he wasn't restrained this time. If Kuzan or Sakazuki were around, Doflamingo wouldn't be able to get up," Chief Staff Ahe said after thinking about it. Although she didn't come to the scene, she quickly analyzed Doflamingo's weakness based on Jia's report. Among other things, at least both Sakazuki and Kuzan can restrain the ability of the blood mist. Sakazuki can directly pull out the volcano, which can completely burn the blood mist. As for Kuzan, it is no problem to freeze the blood mist. From these perspectives, Doflamingo's strange ability that can make Sengoku temporarily unable to do anything is not unsolvable, it's just that Marine failed to restrain him this time. In addition, how long do you estimate that Doflamingo can last under the current situation? Suru asked. Looking at the blood fog on the island, Jia hesitated for a moment before saying, "Looking at the current situation, if Sengoku Admiral fails to think of a good solution, 10 days. Should be no problem." After thinking for a while, Chief Staff Officer Suru said, "It should be too late to send support from the headquarters, so, in addition, you start calling for logistical ammunition support from the nearest Marine base. Doflamingo's blood mist will be exhausted as soon as possible." When Jia heard the words, he immediately responded, "Understood, great staff officer." Soon this side hung up the phone bug, and then Jia took out the fleet's internal command phone bug, and said in a deep voice, "Everyone has it, target Cervantes, bombard with full firepower, cover shooting." Plus, he didn't consider Sengoku Admiral's intentions on the island at all, and there was no need to consider it. With Sengoku Admiral's strength and the firepower of the Marine fleet covering him, it was impossible to hurt him. Then, Jia called the nearby Marine base and asked them to deliver ammunition to Cervantes immediately in the name of Naval Headquarters. Soon, the Marine shelling began, and the huge warship fired artillery continuously. In the blood mist of the island, there was a roar and a flash of gunpowder explosions soon. After the first round of bombardment, Jia found through careful comparison and observation that the blood mist really seemed to be less. At the same time, above the high-altitude clouds, a small hot air balloon airship is hovering here. On this airship, there is a person holding a high-powered camera, looking for angles, and taking pictures of the roaring Cervantes and Marine fleet. After taking some pretty good photos, he quickly took out his phone bug and made a call. Janet, have you found any big news material? The phone bug was quickly picked up, and an excited voice asked. Janet, the ace reporter of the World Economic News, and the person who was talking to him on the phone at this time was the president of the World Economic News, Big News Morgans. Speaking of which, although the news of the World Newspaper Office has improved a lot now, it is still quite a lot of competitors, unlike 20 years later when it basically monopolized the news and public opinion circles. Therefore, Morgans, a birdman, has been thinking about making some big news all day long, so as to increase the popularity and influence of his own newspaper. So he did not hesitate to spend a lot of money to establish newspaper bases all over the world, dig some famous reporters, and set up an internal information network that runs around 14 hours a day. To be honest, Morgans is obviously running a newspaper, but he is not far behind some intelligence agencies. And Janet is the ace reporter of the news of the world in North Blue. After hearing Morgan's voice, Janet said a little excitedly, "Big news, President Morgans, His Excellency Admiral Sengoku of Naval Headquarters, led the fleet to North Blue, and attacked the Civilian Scientific Research Organization. MADS. MADS organization leader Dr. Vegapunk is captured." What? Morgans asked in surprise. Is it the MADS research team that released the theory of lineage factors, not long ago, which caused a big explosion in the scientific world? That's right, it's them, Janet said quickly. This is really big news. Ha 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 ha. The government of the world has actually taken action against scientists. Sure enough, this bloodline factor theory is very dangerous, Morgans said excitedly. Just when he was thinking about how to report this big news, Janet continued, "But that's not the point, President Morgans." Oh. Morgans was surprised. Is there any more exciting news? Yes, it's very exciting. Hai actually hides a powerful character that none of us can think of, Janet said excitedly. Who? Morgans asked quickly. Don Quixote Doflamingo, Janet replied immediately. Don Quixote Doflamingo. Morgans was a little confused, and then said, the biggest smuggler in North Blue, the leader of North Blue's dark world, and the Don Quixote family? That's right, it's him, Janet said excitedly. Before today, we all thought he was just a member of the dark world, the young master of the Don Quixote family, and a smuggler, but now, it's completely different. What the hell happened? Morgans asked itchingly. Don Quixote family should be the latest investor of the MADS research team. Originally, the MADS research team stayed in North Blue Cervantes Island, which is the base camp of the Don Quixote family, for a long time. They only set off from Cervantes this morning and met Marine's interception, so they quickly fled toward Cervantes, which triggered a conflict between the Don Quixote family and Marine, Janet said. The fleet led by Naval Headquarters Sengoku Admiral. The Don Quixote family dare to stop it? Morgans asked in surprise. This is the main point. Don Quixote Doflamingo, who was not well known before, fought fiercely with Admiral Sengoku of Naval Headquarters in Cervantes by himself. It has been fighting for more than half a day. The winner is not yet decided. Don Quixote Doflamingo's strength is far beyond our imagination. Unfortunately, Cervantes has been surrounded by Marine's fleet. Otherwise, I will be able to sneak in further. Let's see what happened to Cervantes and why Don Quixote Doflamingo fought fiercely with Marine Admiral, Janet said regretfully. Of course, it wasn't just Marine's fleet, it was mainly because of the weird blood mist that he was afraid to enter. Take a few more photos of their fierce battle, Don Quixote Doflamingo. It's really unexpected. I didn't expect North Blue to have such a ruthless person. Speaking of it, North Blue has really appeared in recent years a lot of ruthless characters, Morgans said with emotion. Not to mention Suru's chief staff in the early years. In the past 10 years, North Blue has come out of the two marine monsters, Sakazuki and Paluzolino, and there is also the evil King Abba among the pirates Aro Pizarro. In the past 2 years, there has been no disturbance in North Blue, and I thought it should be silent. The result was good, and suddenly there appeared a young Don Quixote Doflamingo who could fight with Admiral of Headquarters Sengoku evenly. This North Blue is really a monster room. After expressing his emotions, Morgans warned again. Be sure to take more close-ups, and when they finish shooting, we will release this big news as soon as possible. While Doflamingo seemed like a good guy, Morgans didn't think he could win. In the end, I am afraid that Marine Admiral Sengoku will win the final victory. There is no reason, it is because of the prestige that Sengoku has accumulated in the sea over the past few decades. But Morgans also feels that Don Quixote Doflamingo is definitely not a fool. If he dares to fight with Marine's Admiral, even if he loses in the end, he may be able to jump to Cervanteba. In this way, this sea will soon usher in new powerful characters. It's better like this. In times of crisis, the more ruthless characters like Doflamingo are, the more turbulent the sea will be. Only in the fierce waves can bright and big news be bred. Ah ha 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 ha. Morgans hung up the phone. Bug laughed excitedly. He has already decided that as long as this Don Quixote Doflamingo is not caught by Marine this time, their News of the World newspaper will regard Doflamingo as the benchmark of the coming new era, brag about it, and give him a big boost. Try to let him stir up the sea, even more chaos. The continuous shelling bombarded the island of Cervantes, and the stronghold of the Don Quixote family, the Miguel Castle, collapsed. At this time, except for Sengoku and Doflamingo, there are no other living people on Cervantes Island. Not to mention living people, even beasts were wiped out by Doflamingo's blood mist and Marine's artillery fire. The iconic island of the dark world of North Blue, Cervantes, may be swept into the dust of history from today. However, Don Quixote family will also open a new chapter because of this. Fierce artillery fire resounded over Cervantes. At this time on the island, the color of the blood mist was basically invisible. Originally, I thought it might take 10 days to consume the blood mist, but looking at it now, it only took 6 days and 5 nights. It can be seen from this that Marine's fleet bombardment power is still very fierce. At this time on Cervantes Island, Marine Admiral Sengoku also looked a little embarrassed. A lot of blood was stained on his body, a new wound was opened on his arm, half of the braided beard hanging on his chest was broken, and a piece of the glasses on the bridge of his nose was broken. But on the whole, apart from the fatigue and embarrassment of fighting for days, he didn't have any serious injuries on his body. On the other hand, it's not too far away from him. The state of Don Quixote Doflamingo is miserable. With high-speed regeneration, he has a huge vitality, but at this moment, he seems to be scarred. The last faint mist of blood in the air is drilling into his body, trying to provide him with the vitality he needs to heal himself. But compared with the injuries on his body at this time, it is obviously not enough. Doflamingo was lying among the rocks of the ruins, with only a small half of his left arm left. Under the shoulder and elbow, there were round broken bone spurs and blurred flesh and blood. Not only that, his chest was collapsed, and his lungs seemed to have been seriously injured. During breathing, blood foam could be seen spraying out uncontrollably from his nose. At the same time, the corner of his mouth was still overflowing with fresh blood, which could be vaguely seen, and it seemed that fragments of internal organs were still mixed in the blood. Locking on his breath alone, Dio Flaming was already in a serious injury. After watching the last ray of blood mist being swallowed by Doflamingo, his breathing just calmed down a little bit, and after not being as fast as before, Sengoku finally heaved a sigh of relief. Is the fight tough? Not difficult, just some people. I think he is dozens of years old. The last time he fought against people day and night like this was 5 or 6 years ago when he encountered the Whitebeard pirates in New World. But exhausted, although exhausted, Sengoku Admiral is not exhausted to the point of exhaustion. After all, he is a top Phantom Beast expert. How could he be forced to this point by Doflamingo? After calming down his shortness of breath, Sengoku took off his shattered glasses, threw them on the ground beside him, and walked towards the ruins where Doflamingo was. You are really a difficult guy, Doflamingo. If you let you continue to grow, it will be difficult. Sengoku Admiral walked in front of Doflamingo, looking down at the seriously injured, unwilling to move Doflamingo road. Doflamingo forced a smile, and said intermittently, "It's hard. If it's hard, then don't do it." Sengoku. Seriously, Sengoku spoke highly of Doflamingo's potential. Nowadays, the main reason why Doflamingo can be dealt with within 6 days is because Doflamingo's own strength is not so strong that it is difficult to handle. Therefore, the frequency of his being severely injured is very high, often in 3 or 5 moves. Sengoku can beat Doflamingo to vomit blood once, and within 100 moves, Doflamingo will definitely be severely injured. Therefore, these days, Doflamingo has been in a state of being constantly beaten, injured, and recovering. Naturally, the huge vitality contained in the blood mist is consumed very quickly. But what if Doflamingo grows up later and becomes stronger? The frequency of his injuries has decreased, coupled with his terrifying and weird resilience, it is simply outrageous. So Sengoku felt that once Doflamingo really grows up, he will definitely become one of the most threatening monsters in the sea. As for whether Doflamingo has growth potential, Sengoku, Admiral, who fought fiercely against Doflamingo for 6 days, has a right to speak, yes. This guy is progressing very fast, and he will definitely benefit a lot from this battle with him. But fortunately, all this is finally coming to an end. So badly hit, Sengoku deliberately broke off Doflamingo's 2 wings at the last moment. He couldn't believe it. This guy can still run. Don't be so stubborn, Doflamingo. You have committed too many crimes. You will spend the rest of your life in the deep sea prison in Purton. Sengoku said coldly. Fufurfur. Sengoku. Admiral. Doflamingo struggled and smiled and said, "You don't think you've got me, do you? Not to mention that it doesn't matter even if he is arrested and taken to Impelton. Anyway, the boss Shiki will be arrested soon anyway, and then he will escape from prison. When the time comes, hug Shiki's thighs tightly, recognize a godfather, let's run together. What's more, Doflamingo is hiding behind. He is not a hot-blooded idiot who completely ignores and does not consider any consequences. Although he has decided and implemented it, he will go all out to fight Sengoku, the Marine Admiral. But in the end, when the situation started to fall into a bad situation, Doflamingo did not choose to evacuate, but actually shed the last drop of Cervantes' blood, which was very strange. Hearing Doflamingo's words, Sengoku's eyes flashed a strange color, but he still said with some disbelief, "I'd like to see what other skills you have. Next time we meet. I won't be beaten by you for so long like this time, but I still have to say, thank you," Doflamingo said softly. "I really want to thank Sengoku Admiral. If he hadn't worked hard and played with me for 6 days, I wouldn't have grown so fast." Doflamingo now feels that the current self can beat the previous self by 3. It is true that the hard power has not improved much, but the thinking and skills of fighting, the ability to resist being beaten, the mentality when fighting, the momentum and rhythm adaptation when fighting against top masters, and other factors have been greatly enhanced. There will be no next time. Sengoku stepped forward and grabbed Doflamingo's neck, with the dark armament hockey in his hand. Obviously, Sengoku is really worried that this Doflamingo has some tricks and can escape from under his nose, so let's lock him with hockey first. But soon, Sengoku realized something was wrong. Doflamingo didn't struggle for anything, he just smiled at Sengoku calmly, and then the aura on his body began to decline rapidly, and the injuries that could be sustained began to collapse. Not long after, Doflamingo's chest, which was stubbornly rising and falling in weakness, calmed down. Sengoku is a bit confused. "You guy, how can you say that you are dead? The ruthless words you said just now mean that you want to meet me in the next life, right?" But before Sengoku recovered from this weird situation, Doflamingo's corpse gradually began to soften, and within a few breaths, it turned into a puddle of blood, leaving nothing behind. Sengoku's observation hockey quickly enveloped the entire Cervantes, but still failed to notice any changes. Seeing Doflamingo's corpse turned into blood, Sengoku's heart was heavy. Although he doesn't want to admit it, it seems that bastard Don Quixote Doflamingo really fled right under his nose, with a certain method he can't determine. Otherwise, there is no way to explain his corpse. It can't be said that before this kid died, he prepared his own corpse powder and arranged a funeral for himself, right? While Sengoku was looking at the pool of blood and pondering, Cake boarded the island with a group of marines and rushed over. "Admiral." Gaji stepped forward to Sengoku's side and asked, "Where is Doflamingo?" Sengoku frowned, and then said, "Maybe he escaped. This guy's body is in front of my eyes." After listening to this description, Jiaji is also very confused. "Good guy. Why are all the abilities of this Don Quixote Doflamingo so hellish? Inform the intelligence department to increase the threat level of Don Quixote Doflamingo, set up a response team, and track their Don Quixote family's intelligence in an all-round way. Make sure to find out whether this bastard is still alive." Sengoku said, a little annoyed. He's a dignified Marine Admiral. In this damn place, he's being fooled by people. Shameless? This time I suffered from the information. If there is a next time, I must make Doflamingo look good. What if he is really alive? Jaji hesitated for a moment, then asked. Sengoku's face sank and he said, "According to pirates, he issued a wanted warrant. He destroyed Cervantes, massacred tens of thousands of people, and created such a tragedy. It's a heinous crime. Of course, these can only define Doflamingo as a villain. The real factor that defines him as a pirate is because he fights against Marine Zero. You dare to resist the righteous Marine like this, so what are you not a pirate?" North Blue, Sisrico Island. In fact, this island is not very far from Cervantes, and it can be reached in about 5 days. It's just that Sisrico Island is very small in size and lacks in resources, so it is uninhabited and undeveloped. It is a very common small desert island. But at this time, members of the Don Quixote family and important partners are all gathered here. In the temporary camp, the cadres of Don Quixote family, including Diamante and Virgo, were surrounded by a tent and rarely showed up. Not far away, the remnants of the MADS research team were also sitting together. Judge looked at his little friends, and then asked, "What are you going to do next?" Guy Saw was the first one to answer, and Guy Saw said with a little fear, "The situation outside is too dangerous now, and the government of the world wants to arrest us. Anyway, I won't show up easily. Why don't I just hide? Forget about the Donquixote family, anyway. Doflamingo seems to take care of us. Quinn's expression hesitated for a moment, and then said, I haven't thought about it yet. In fact, in the past few days, everyone has considered the future path. The same is true for Quinn. He originally planned to go to New World after evading Marine's pursuit. He heard that the Beast's pirates were recruiting Zone's ability users. On his own terms, he should be able to make a comeback after spending some time in the past. As for Mads, not to mention that the world government is arresting them now, just say that Dr. Vegapunk, the leader, has been arrested by Marine, which means that this research team has come to an end. Everyone can work together here because everyone admires Vegapunk, but everyone else looks down on each other. If the company goes bankrupt, the members must be disbanded. At the beginning, they planned to go to New World, but Doflamingo fought fiercely with Marine Admiral, and the stalemate lasted for a few days, and Marine did not see victory in the battle. This caused Quinn's perception of Doflamingo to undergo an earth-shaking change. At first, Quinn only thought that Doflamingo was a rich countryman from North Blue. At most, he made some money through the so-called Dark World, and Judge regarded him as an investor and used it to invest in the Mads team. After getting in touch with him, he found that he and Doflamingo are really compatible in many aspects, mainly because they don't have any special moral bottom line. To put it bluntly, they are just bad enough. Indeed, looking at it this way, the environment of the Donquixote family is quite suitable for me. However, Quinn still feels that the future here is not big enough. You can't bet yourself on the future of Donquixote family just because you say you get along well with Doflamingo, right? Until Doflamingo stepped up against Marine and fought with Marine Admiral. Although I didn't see how Doflamingo fought against Marine Admiral. But Quinn was greatly shocked. How old is Doflamingo? In my impression, Doflamingo is 18 years old this year. At the age of 18, he can play against Marine Admiral, which shows how terrifying Doflamingo's potential is. Because of this, the scale in Quinn's heart is already tilting. It is obvious that Donquixote family is developing and just started, and Doflamingo has great potential. If they can join in at this time, they will grow bigger and stronger in the future. Now, don't you also have a bright future? In comparison, Kaido's side doesn't seem so attractive. After all, Quinn is not familiar with Kaido now, and does not know Kaido. So Quinn is waiting now. Wait and see, if Doflamingo escapes from Marine Admiral alive, returns to Donquixote family, continues to be the young master of the family, leading the direction of the family or something. Then he bets Quinn. With Doflamingo. If Doflamingo can't come back, it means that his luck has come to an end. After a few days, the limelight will pass, and he will find a way to go back to New World and visit the pier with Beast's pirates. In the end, Ba Jin looked at the other three people, and said, You all know that I will quit Mads after this project is over. It's just that some accidents have happened, and everyone can no longer cooperate. Then I will follow the plan and return to New World to do my own things. Judge and others were not surprised when they saw this. It seemed that they knew that Ba Jin was going to leave. Finally, Guy turned to Judge and said, What about you? Judge. Me? I'm okay. After all, I'm the king of the franchise country under the government of the world. After the limelight passes, I'll keep a low profile. First think Marine won't come to trouble me again. Although it's a pity that I can't join my colleagues, the blood factor theory has been implemented, but I will not give up in the future. If you have the opportunity, you can come to Germa to find me, Judge said immediately. Just when a few of them were discussing where to go. In the tent at the center of the camp, Virgo and others were surrounding a blood-red bat. The bat seemed to be in suspended animation, and the F on the table didn't move. It's been almost a week, my lord, Virgo whispered worriedly. Gladius was also very impatient. He gritted his teeth and said, Why don't you give me a boat, and I'll go back and see what's going on. If the young master really encounters an accident, I will try my best to save him. As soon as Gladius finished speaking, Diamante slapped him on the head and said, Smelly brat, it seems that you are loyal, right? Senor also directly said, If the young master is really caught by Marine unfortunately, then we should find a way to rescue the young master. The last day, after today, we can no longer lurk here, we must get active, contact the rest of the family's resident and cadres, use the fastest speed to obtain the young master's information, and then formulate a plan. Virgo said in a deep voice, Just as several people were discussing this, the bat that had been in a state of suspended animation suddenly moved. Everyone's heart trembled, and they all looked at the bat intently. In the next second, a puff of white smoke suddenly exploded from the bat, and then Doflamingo's cough was heard. Cough, cough, cough. When the smoke dissipated and the bats were gone, everyone saw Doflamingo sitting on the table with a weak face. His body was seriously injured and he was in a mess. My lord. Gladius shouted excitedly. Foo. It seems that I escaped smoothly. Doflamingo smiled weakly. Blood. Come on, bring in the prepared blood. Virgo immediately stood up and greeted. Soon, the Donquixote family brothers in the camp took action, and after a while, a large amount of blood was poured into the water tank and brought to the tent. These were prepared by Virgo and others, so several sea beasts were killed. Soon, when Doflamingo absorbed the blood, his condition also recovered. The injuries on his body have completely recovered, but it can also be seen that his spirit is quite tired. Physical injuries can be recovered through abilities, but after a few days of beatings, the mental stress and exhaustion cannot be recovered by sucking blood. When fighting Sengoku, Doflamingo was hiding his mental exhaustion. In fact, even if the blood mist was not completely consumed, Doflamingo might not last long. Dover. What's the end result? Diamante asked with some expectation. Although he knew it in his heart, he could imagine the result after seeing the miserable state of his young master just now. But what if a miracle happens? Seeing everyone's expectant expressions, Doflamingo rolled his eyes and said, "Don't think about it, I was beaten badly, Marine Admiral. Tsk, well-deserved reputation." After this battle, Doflamingo did not swell, on the contrary, he also deeply realized his own shortcomings. Regarding my immortality, to be honest, it's already very powerful, didn't you see that even Sengoku couldn't kill him? But the flaw is also very obvious, that is, his aggressiveness is too low. After so many days of beating, I just resorted to sucking blood and gave Sengoku a hard blow, and the rest was scraping. If you say that you have mastered powerful attacks such as the Elbaf's spear, before fighting Sengoku, maybe the battle will go in another direction? From the current point of view, his ability is too weak in terms of attack power, and he needs to make up for it as soon as possible, otherwise he will be a living target for Doflamingo. It's not a masochist, what's the point of being hammered by someone? Soon, after arranging the things that need to be dealt with in these 2 days, Doflamingo walked out of the tent. Not far away, Judge, Quinn, and the others had actually heard the commotion a long time ago. Didn't you see a group of people pumping blood into it just now? However, when Doflamingo walked out of the tent intact, several people were still shocked. Dover. Judge stepped forward enthusiastically, and this time he changed his mouth to say. As soon as he grasped Doflamingo's hand, he said in a very grateful way. Thanks to you this time, Doffer. If it weren't for you who helped restrain Marine, we might all be caught by Marine now, right? I will definitely remember this kindness. For a straightforward and honest person like Hayreddin, Doflamingo would believe a little bit of gratitude. But Judge, the sixth child who is struggling in the dark world, if you say something like this, you might as well just bow down and bow, it's true. But this is not the time to argue with Judge, there are still many opportunities in the future. So Doflamingo also smiled hypocritically and said, it should be, everyone is from North Blue, not to mention, you are my important partners in North Blue, who doesn't know that I, Doflamingo, are famous for my loyalty. Before Doflamingo said this, he might feel a little guilty, but now, he is justified. Just kidding, for the sake of loyalty. I had a fight with Marine Admiral, who in North Blue would dare to call me Doflamingo sinister and cunning. Whether the old fox judge believes it or not, Geisa, Quinn and Ba Jin should believe it anyway. Especially Guy, he hugged Doflamingo's arm with snot and tears, and cried, Dover, thank you for saving me this time, it's too dangerous outside now, Marine and the world government are here again hunt us down. When we were drinking together last time, you said that if I came to join you one day, you would definitely open the door, Dover, you must mean what you say. Guy, it sounds like you want to join our Donquixote family, right? Doflamingo asked with a smile. Guy said this guy knelt very quickly, and said on the spot, yes, that's what I mean, do you think it's appropriate? Before Doflamingo could speak, Quinn on the side followed suit, Dover, if you don't dislike it, count me in. Anyway, now that Mads exists in name only, we all plan to go our separate ways. Chatting with you is quite pleasant, I have nowhere to go, so I just follow you. Guy knelt down so quickly, Doflamingo was very acceptable, but he still thought that maybe there would be some twists and turns for Quinn, and he had to think about other ways. Unexpectedly, Quinn also directly chose to join, which really made Doflamingo feel double happiness. After sorting out his emotions for a while, Doflamingo immediately said, our Donquixote family recognizes the talents of the two of you very much. Now, our family is booming, and it must be a blessing to have the two of you join us. I'm very welcome. Doflamingo's words must be in tune, and Virgo and the others all applauded, with a look of warm welcome. Diamante even felt a little emotional in her heart. The young lord really loves them. In order to try every means to draw them into the family, He even sacrificed the base camp of Cervantes Island. In fact, Diamante's emotion is still a bit wrong. Doflamingo didn't intend to do this at first. He even hoped that he could coordinate with Marine in a smoother way. It's just that during the fight, Sengoku pointed out his long-standing scruples, and instantly understood his mentality and shortcomings. After that, Doflamingo really decided to fight to the end. In Doflamingo's mind, Cervantes was not destroyed because of Quinn and Geisa. Cervantes was destroyed for his self-awareness and self-discovery. The destruction of Cervantes symbolizes his true rebirth of Doflamingo. After dealing with Geisa and Quinn, Doflamingo also looked at Barkin and Judge. Ba Jin was also straightforward, and immediately said, "Thank you this time, Your Excellency Doflamingo, but after this, I will return to New World. This is a plan I made a long time ago." "Ms. Ba Jin, you don't have to be so polite. We Donquixote family have always respected our own wishes," Doflamingo said immediately. As for Bajin's reasons, since she didn't intend to stay, Doflamingo didn't intend to listen. "I have to say that she is indeed a talent, but with Quinn and Guy in her hands, she is not so indispensable, and the twisted melon is not sweet." Judge heard the words and said, "Dover, I'm going back to Germa after this. We are both from North Blue. Maybe we were strangers before, but now we are in trouble together. We will definitely keep in touch in the future." Good guy, human spirit, the rest is silent. But Doflamingo didn't bother with him, and patted Judge on the shoulder with a smile and said, "No problem. If our Donquixote family joins hands with Germa, the North Blue sky and earth will be ours." "Ha ha 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 ha, yes, yes," Judge said with a big laugh. They stayed on this small desert island for another day. Early the next morning, everyone set off together for the next destination, which was Mignon Island. Judge arranged for Germa's warhouse and went to Mignon Island to pick him up, and Barkin was supposed to be there, a black ship back to New World or something. A few days later, in the cabin, Doflamingo saw Virgo holding a freshly baked newspaper, and asked, "How is it? Is there any news about us in the newspaper?" Virgo shook his head and said, "No, I have read several newspapers from different newspapers, and there is no mention of Cervantes in the newspapers." Doflamingo was slightly annoyed. It seems that the damn Marine has controlled this public opinion. He also thought that by virtue of this incident, he would become famous in one fell swoop and create a new brand in the sea. The result was good, the beating was over, Cervantes was destroyed, and there was not even a fart on the FC King news. Before this Marine came, I was like Doflamingo. After this Marine came, I still Doflamingo. Didn't Marine come here for nothing? Isn't my Doflamingo a white hits? Pay a Cervantes to get in. After suppressing his anger, Doflamingo asked again, "Then Marine, is there any action for our Donquixote family?" Virgo shook his head again and said, "It doesn't seem like there is any change." This made Doflamingo frown, pondered for a moment, and then said, "Wait a little longer, I feel like things are not that simple. If there is no news in the newspaper, forget it." But Marine didn't move at all, which is very strange. Sengoku, Marine Admiral, shameless, don't hold grudges? Analyzing according to the normal way of thinking, Doflamingo soon felt that it was uncertain. Marine was not sure whether he, Doflamingo, was alive or dead. In other words, it is very possible that Marine's attitude will change once he shows up again. In fact, not only Marine, but Morgans of the News of the World is also waiting to determine the life and death of Langmingo. He originally planned to distribute newspapers and release news immediately after the Cervantes incident came to an end. Even for this, he has prepared two plans. One is to praise Marine, which is naturally the article that Marine wiped out the evil of North Blue Donquixote family. Of course, this means that Don Quixote Doflamingo was given by Marine caught or killed. However, this article is too ordinary, so Morgans intends to not spend too much energy pushing this news if the result is Doflamingo's defeat. But if Doflamingo escapes successfully and protects the remaining members of Mads, it means that he lost the battle, but won in the end. At the same time, he fought fiercely with Marine Admiral Sengoku for 6 days. This is also a breaking point. At that time, Doflamingo will definitely make a big splash and invest resources in promotion. Only such news can explode. But what happened in the end was that Morgans was very embarrassed because Doflamingo didn't know whether he was alive or not. So Morgans saw that Marine didn't make any moves, and he thought to himself, then I just keep the same rhythm as Marine. Wait and see, if Doflamingo is still alive, Marine will definitely take action as soon as he shows up. The first step must be to put Doflamingo in the wanted range. You can also refer to Marine's reward for Doflamingo to judge Sengoku's evaluation of Doflamingo. So, Morgans decided, let the bullet fly one. It is also because of this that several days have passed, and the public opinion is still very calm, without any waves. Naval Headquarters Malinford, the fleet led by Sengoku, also returned here. After disembarking the warship, he ordered Dr. Vegapunk to be arranged, and Sengoku walked towards the Fortress of Justice. When he came to the marshal's office, he found that Garp and others were sitting here. Looking at Garp and Zephyr again, they are holding teacups, snacks and fruit plates, and they look like they are watching a show, and they know that these two bastards are not good at fart. Marshal. Sengoku ignored Garp and the others, and greeted Marshal Kong first. Yeah. Marshal Kong nodded, and before Sengoku could explain anything, he said directly, anyway, Dr. Vegapunk was taken down by us, which means the mission is completed, and the rest are details. Sengoku, it doesn't have to be too much pressure. Sengoku Admiral shook his head and said, there is no pressure, but I do feel threatened by Donquixote Doflamingo. Such a person, when he grows up, may become a terrifying monster again. Speaking of which, North Blue has rumored that he is born evil. You have seen him with your own eyes this time. How do you feel? Chief Staff Officer Suru asked Chi 43. The rumors may not be wrong. At least in my opinion, Donquixote Doflamingo is a guy who uses unscrupulous means to achieve his goals. The key is that he is also extremely cruel. From his behavior, it can be felt that he will not kill anyone at all. As a matter of fact, tens of thousands of Cervantes were sacrificed by his blood, Sengoku said with a somewhat unhappy expression. After hearing the news, the rest of the marine bosses also had a lot of serious expressions. How to judge the threat of a pirate? From his strength? From his reputation? Or power? It can be said that there are all of them, but in marine, the most important thing is destructiveness. A powerful big pirate, even if he can fight against Marine Admiral without losing the wind, as long as he doesn't violate the world government too much, and doesn't engage in some big incidents, just wander around in the sea, in fact, Marine will not give him any time. Added too many bounties. On the contrary, those pirates who have no ability but can always cause big incidents, slaughter islands, towns, and countries, behave aggressively, and have a bad temper like terrorists. Even if a vice admiral can handle him, Marine will often give a very high reward as coming, and they will try their best to get rid of these people as soon as possible. It's true that there aren't many good people on Cervantes Island, but Sengoku knows very well that Doflamingo didn't think about it at all when he slaughtered Cervantes. That is to say, this time it happened to be in Cervantes, and next time in some other place, even if it is on an island full of ordinary people, Doflamingo will not be lenient when it is time to massacre. This has proven Doflamingo's brutality, but such a simple judgment on Doflamingo is also inappropriate. From a comprehensive and incomprehensive point of view, although Doflamingo's threat level is very high, he is indeed not the kind of lunatic who takes pleasure in slaughtering. Before Marine didn't provoke Doflamingo this time, the Donquixote family didn't do anything that Marine felt was extremely violent in the past 8 years. It was just normal, a member of the Dark World, the largest smuggler in North Blue or something. As for Doflamingo's notoriety, according to Marine's investigation, it can be concluded that he did it on purpose. Therefore, from a certain point of view, Doflamingo can be regarded as a member of lawful evil. He is not a madman. His cruel, tyrannical and other behaviors are only used to achieve his goals. On weekdays, he should be regarded as a normal person. This is an analysis conclusion for Doflamingo by Sengoku on the way back, some experts in marine-related fields, after intelligence analysis. Being able to fight fiercely with you for several days, and finally escape from your hands, that guy really has something. Garp nodded while eating a snack. Based on his current situation, if he is really still alive, he must be identified as a pirate. Otherwise we will end badly. Zephyr touched his chin and said. Marine defines the target as a pirate only after the other party has performed some assisting behavior. For example, the later Straw Hat pirates did not plunder any islands, towns, etc., but they were judged as pirates. In the final analysis, there is only one main factor that defines the target as a pirate, and that is Marine against justice. As long as this factor is met, regardless of whether you have basic pirate behavior or not, Marine will have the power to define you as a pirate, and can carry out various crusades against you in the future. Doflamingo blocked Marine from carrying out his mission, sheltered the MADS research team identified as an illegal organization and a dangerous gang by the government of the world, fought against Marine Admiral, and massacred the people of the whole island. Marine has just too much reason to define him as pirates. After discussing for a while, several people have made a decision. Well, starting today, Quixote Doflamingo is a pirate. Then if he is really alive, how much reward should we give him? Suru asked. It has already been decided to define it as a pirate. The first step is to offer a reward. A pirate without a reward can only be called a gangster, but Doflamingo is obviously the leader of the gang. As soon as Chief Staff Officer Suru's voice fell, the rest of the people fell silent, looking at Admiral Sengoku. Just kidding, he is the only one who has fought with Doflamingo here, so it must be Sengoku who has the most say. After thinking for a while, Sengoku said in a deep voice, about 200 million, almost. 200 million. Garp was stunned for a moment, and then said, this is the first time he has offered a reward. Of course I know, but he has escaped from my hands. I know how difficult he is, how difficult it is to catch, Sengoku said without hesitation. After pondering for a while, Zephyr said, the most important thing is that he is not a newcomer in the true sense. He has a mature team behind him. Since he is defined as a pirate, the Donquixote family he belongs to should also be defined as the pirate group, judging by the size of the Donquixote family. This is a large pirate group. Combined with this background and his strength, 200 million is not too much. Zephyr is right. Although Doflamingo has been offered a first reward, this time, but this guy must not be viewed with the attitude of a newcomer. Behind him is a huge force that spans the dark side of the entire North Blue. It belongs to the kind of gang leader who wants money, and people who want people. Combined with his strength and threat, there is nothing wrong with giving him 200 million. The rest of the marine bosses heard that it seemed to be the case, so they didn't bother with the reward anymore. Then it's time to take action now. Let's wipe out the stronghold of the North Blue Donquixote family first, Garp said immediately. But before he finished speaking, the phone on Marshal Kong's desk rang suddenly. Marshal Kong picked up the phone bug, and quickly said a lot of words. Marshal Kong's expression became a lot darker. After hanging up the phone, Marshal Kong looked at everyone and said, Donquixote Doflamingo led some members of the Donquixote family and appeared on North Blue Mignon Island. It can be confirmed that the other party did not die, but escaped. Secondly, when he showed up, North Blue had 14 franchised royal families. He called Marie Joyce. Although he didn't say anything clearly, the meaning was to let us not treat the Donquixote family. It went too far. What did these bastards mean? Garp raged. Chief Staff Officer Suru said calmly, the operation of the Donquixote family involves too deep a network of interests in North Blue. If it is pulled out suddenly, it will indeed be a big backlash. Not to mention the North Blue royal family, even their marines can use the gloves of the dark world from time to time. Donquixote family, as the bearer and agent of the dark side of North Blue, can't just fall, and there are too many interests involved. In the words of Doflamingo, I have been in North Blue for so many years, spent so much money, and fattened up so many people, isn't it just for this kind of time? You marine want to kill my business. He wants to see the opinion of North Blue. Marshal Kong looked at the crowd, and finally set the tone. Donquixote family's business. Don't move for now, deal with Doflamingo first, the follow-up is easy to talk about. In fact, this is also normal, as long as Marine cleans up Doflamingo, no matter whether it is killed or sent to Imperton. The Donquixote family will be much easier to deal with without the leader. I believe that many people will be willing to jump out at that time. Shangkun Doflamingo's important responsibility. Conversely, if Doflamingo has not been dealt with, if you start the business of Donquixote family, Doflamingo will be able to mobilize his network and make things happen, which will cause a lot of trouble. The rest of the people thought, yes, as long as Doflamingo is done, the rest of the things can be solved easily. After all, the princes and nobles of North Blue will not stand up for a loser. With the appearance of Donquixote Doflamingo in Mignon Island, North Blue, which was originally calm, seemed to explode at once. Several members of the royal family contacted Doflamingo immediately, asking him what happened to Cervantes Island. Why did he suddenly have sex with Marine? And Doflamingo also answered frankly, Marine is on his territory, and he wants to arrest his partners. If he, Doflamingo, doesn't stand up, how will the business be done in the future? Should the Donquixote family lose face? Not to mention, as soon as these words were released, many royal families understood Doflamingo very well. After all, from this perspective, they can be regarded as vested interests, because they are also important partners of Donquixote family. This means that if one day in the future, they are in trouble, Doflamingo may also help them. When the news about Donquixote Doflamingo fought Marine for his partner until the destruction of Cervantes spread in the dark world. Not to mention, Doflamingo's image suddenly became brilliant. Good guy, there hasn't been a loyal person like Doflamingo in the dark world for more than 100 years. For the sake of his partners, he forcibly wiped out his lair. You are noble, you are amazing. Immediately afterwards, there was a big explosion of news. This time, it was not limited to North Blue in the dark world, but it caused quite a stir in the whole world. After all, it depends on the background. In the first battle of Doflamingo's pirate debut, he stepped on Marine Admiral to take the top position, which is really a bit arrogant. The News of the World even used a whole issue of the newspaper to describe the major events in North Blue Cervantes Island in an all-round way. Morgan's Blue Doflamingo on the news. Marine Admiral Sengoku North Blue crashed into the sand. North Blue has come out of a strong man again after many years. North Blue past Donquixote family mystery. North Blue Lord of Darkness Donquixote Doflamingo 3 things. The first reward is as high as 196 million Baileys. The man who became a great pirate overnight. The North Blue Cervantes Island incident was caused by MADS, a non-governmental scientific research group. This scientific research organization published a scientific research result called Blood Factor Theory in the Frontiers magazine a few days ago. I don't know the result. What kind of danger is contained? In short, the world government immediately defined the MADS research team as an illegal organization and dangerous organization, and sent Admiral of Headquarters Sengoku to hunt down and deal with the incident. At that time, the MADS research team was looking for investors due to lack of funds and other reasons. The Donquixote family of North Blue seemed to be very interested in this project, so they chose to invest. Members of the MADS team also boarded the base camp of the Donquixote family because of this. The flashpoint of the next major event, Cervantes Island. According to reliable sources, the Donquixote family and MADS quickly reached a cooperation intention, with an initial investment of up to 20 billion Baileys. Afterwards, the MADS team took the funds and prepared to return to the laboratory to continue scientific research, but after leaving Cervantes not long after entering the island, they encountered the marine fleet that came to hunt them down. Dr. Vegapunk, the chief scientist of the MADS research team, was arrested, and the rest of the members fled back to Cervantes Island in a panic. Marine's behavior directly angered the Donquixote family. According to the information on the scene, the two sides did not even have an effective communication, and they directly started the exchange of artillery. Follow-up, Naval Headquarters Vice Admiral and Admiral of Headquarters Sengoku landed on Cervantes Island, and immediately, the leader of the Donquixote family Donquixote Doflamingo, had a fierce battle with them. At first, everyone felt that this battle was unequal and that Marine would win quickly, but when Cervantes was shrouded in blood mist, everything changed. Donquixote Doflamingo, with his own the power of the battle with Marine Admiral for 6 days and 5 nights. Ultimately, after successfully covering the retreat of the MADS team and the rest of the Donquixote family, Doflamingo also evacuated Cervantes Island without a deathmatch with Sengoku Admiral. It can be said that from the results of the battle, it should be Marine's victory, but from the perspective of the goals of both parties, this is Marine's failure and the Donquixote family's victory. When this newspaper was published, Naval Headquarters Malinford had identified Donquixote Doflamingo and his gang, Donquixote family, as a pirate organization. The leader of the Donquixote family, Donquixote Doflamingo, was offered a bounty of 196 million Baileys by Naval Headquarters. In the newspaper, there is also a reward notice for Doflamingo. The photo on the arrest warrant is not intimidating, it is a photo taken from a distance, in which Doflamingo is wearing a black suit, very elegant and decent, as if he is talking to one of his subordinates. The corners of his mouth were raised, and there was a wicked smile on his face, and he had a special temperament. It's just. At a glance, you can tell that he is not a good guy, but unluckily, he is very attractive. Naval Headquarters considered Doflamingo's brutal character and ability to fly. In the end, it was called Heavenly Yaksha Donquixote Doflamingo on the bounty notice. All of a sudden, everyone in the sea was shocked. Good guy, another werewolf came out of North Blue. He's only 20 years old, but he can fight Sengoku for 6 days regardless of the outcome. Finally managed to run away from Sengoku, North Blue, Mignon Island, Lord of the Earth of the Quixote family. Doflamingo was leaning on the sofa at this moment, holding the newspaper in his hand, reading it with gusto. Sure enough, as he judged, Marine and the public opinion had no movement before, and they were waiting to see whether he was dead or alive. As soon as he appeared on Mignon Island, all the torrents that had been suppressed before erupted in an instant. Furfurfur, 196 million Baileys. It's not bad. Doflamingo smiled evilly. The photos were taken well, and my handsome image was not slandered. The only thing that makes Doflamingo feel a little strange is that he has shown the ability of vampire very clearly. Why is this name called Heavenly Yaksha? Although it sounds cool. But there is always a feeling of fate. But these are not important. When we do something big in the future, the name will continue to change. Young Master, Marine now defines us as a pirate organization, so our business in North Blue won't be cleaned up. Virgo asked who was sitting opposite Doflamingo. Doflamingo immediately shook his head and said, Foo-foo-fer, if Marine wants to move our business in North Blue, it depends on North Blue's public opinion. Don't worry. Before Doflamingo showed up, he had already mobilized his personal connections to put pressure on the world government. If Marine still dares to touch business in North Blue, then he is really aiming at killing the fish. At that time, Doflamingo will not be polite. If you pull out one of my strongholds, I will bloodbath one of your Marine branch bases. Anyway, at this point, the two sides will be deadlocked. The Donquixote family will be directly broken into pieces. Thief form run, forget it. The main thing is a tooth for a tooth, blood for blood, and revenge on society. When you see it, you Marines can bear it, and can't bear it. It is estimated that Marine should have considered these situations. Anyway, so far, Marine has not cleaned up the Donquixote family's business in North Blue. Strangely, the two sides seem to have entered a stage of silence. Putting down the newspaper in his hand, Doflamingo stretched his waist and said, "Unless you have nothing to do, don't provoke Marine for the time being. For now, just continue to run the family business normally with Mignon Island as the core. Next, Doflamingo is to wait. Wait for Roger to start the era of great pirates first, and then wait for the world government to implement the 7 Warlords of the Sea plan. After winning the identity of 7 Warlords of the Sea, you can plan to capture Dressrosa, directly enter New World, and start to expand the basic board with Dressrosa as the core. When the time is right, let's swallow the world. But these are too far away. The first problem to be solved at present is the shortboard in strength and the flaw in attack power. To this end, Doflamingo thought over and over again and decided to use a two-pronged approach. On the one hand, develop from the perspective of ability, on the other hand, regain the way of swordsmanship. As we all know, the sword hero's aggressiveness is notoriously powerful on the sea. Then what else can supplement your attack power better than learning the way of swordsmanship? The first half of the Grand Line, Carnival City. The Moby Dick of the Whitebeard Pirates is anchored here. Speaking of which, the Whitebeard Pirates have been away from New World for a while, and they stayed and had fun in Carnival City for a while. After resting, everyone is relaxed, and they are all ready to go back to New World to continue their adventures. On the deck, the tall body of Whitebeard Edward Newgate was sitting on his seat, holding a newspaper in his hand, and laughed in surprise. Oh? That old bastard Sengoku was actually killed by a brat in North Blue. Has it been tossed like this? Kula-la-la-la-la. What a shame. Judging from Newgate's experience, most of the newspapers are talking nonsense. It is not credible to believe that there is no winner or loser in a fierce battle for 6 days. Quixote Doflamingo's imp is deflated, that should be for sure. Otherwise, the kid would not have escaped from Sengoku. Secondly, Marine offered a reward of 196 million Baileys, which also shows Marine's hostility and importance to this guy. Speaking of it, just like Garp and Roger, Whitebeard and Sengoku have been fighting for a lifetime. At this time, Newgate was certainly very happy to see his old opponent deflated. However, although it is shocking enough at this time, it is indeed a big event. But for Newgate, it was nothing more than an anecdote after dinner. Anyway, it had nothing to do with him, and his interests were not damaged. So soon, after reading the newspaper, Newgate stopped paying attention to this matter, and waved his hand. Raise the sails, set sail, it's time to go back to New World. As the Moby Dick slowly sailed out of the port, Newgate looked at the sea, and his thoughts were also wandering. It's been a long time since there's been any news from the Roger Pirates. Where are those guys now? Not that Whitebeard cared much about Roger, mainly because his little brother Kazuki Odin was also on the boat. Recently, even the phone bug has been disconnected, which makes Whitebeard slightly worried. But after thinking about it, it was the Roger Pirates who could compete with him on equal footing, and there were plenty of talents on the top, so there shouldn't be any problem. The romance of pirates. Tisk. Newgate whispered softly, then smacked his lips to restrain his emotions. At the same time, in a mysterious sea area in New World, the Roger Pirates, whom Whitebeard has been obsessed with, are rushing out of the storm. The phone bug has woken up. There is a signal. Copper Jabba held the phone bug, and suddenly shouted excitedly. This means that we have finally rushed out of this damn place, Rayleigh also said with a big laugh. Roger was standing on the deck at this time, and said that by coincidence, just as they rushed out of the storm, a newsbird landed right in front of Roger. He took out the money and bought the latest newspaper, which Roger quickly read. It's been a long time since they entered this mysterious sea area, and they haven't seen the newsbird. Now that it's out, they can finally get to know it. During this time, there is nothing interesting happening on the sea. That's right, the Roger Pirates at this time have successfully conquered the Grand Line. They have just returned from Raftel and are looking for an island to disband. Ah ha 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 ha, it's really pleasant to see Marine suffer a big loss as soon as I come out. Roger looked at the news in the newspaper and laughed. What? What's the matter? Rayleigh leaned forward curiously and asked. There's a newcomer from North Blue, who seems to be very powerful. Roger handed the newspaper to Rayleigh. Looking at the blue sea in front of him, he was filled with emotion. The Roger pirates have finally conquered this sea area known as the Grand Line by the world. The truth of this world has finally been seen clearly, but it is a little regrettable that they came early. What's even more regrettable is that he has no time to wait for this future. What are you thinking about? Rayleigh suddenly looked at Roger, who was silent beside him, and asked. A light flashed in Roger's eyes, and he said, I'm not going to die, Rayleigh. Huh. Rayleigh was stunned for a moment, and then complained, but as far as I know, you won't live long, Roger. Ah ha 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 ha. What you said is really hurtful enough. Roger laughed and patted Rayleigh on the shoulder, then looked at the sea again, and said softly, I won't die. This time, Rayleigh didn't open his mouth to tease anything, looked at Roger's side face, after all he smiled and said, I believe in you, Roger. As soon as Rayleigh finished speaking, Roger didn't feel any more emotion, and said with a big smile, then, speed up, find an island to hold a banquet, and tell the good news of our conquest of the Grand Line to the whole world, ah ha 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 ha. Yeah, we can't always let these newcomers steal all the limelight. It's time to let them know that we are the freest in this sea, Jabba said with a smile while holding his hand axe. Everyone on board was cheering, singing, and happy. But secretly, there is inevitably some sadness in my heart. Everyone knows when the next island arrives, when the last feast ends. That's when everyone goes their separate ways. The Roger pirates are about to disband. Although at this moment, everyone had expected it and made psychological preparations, but at the end, it was still difficult to give up. After wandering in this sea for so long, they are already real family members. Hey, Rayleigh, where are you going after this long journey? On the deck, Jabba asked with a bottle of wine in his hand. Rayleigh hesitated for a moment, and then said, cough. I haven't thought about it yet, maybe I'll find a place to live in seclusion. As soon as he finished speaking, Roger on the side also sat on the deck, patted Rayleigh on the shoulder, laughed and said, Jabba, this guy must be telling lies. How to say? Jabba raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. I bet, after we disband, Rayleigh will definitely go back to Sabodi Archipelago. There are people waiting for him there, ah ha 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 ha. Roger said without hesitation, with an expectant tone. Rayleigh's old face turned red, and before he could speak, Jabba also laughed and said, backquote. That's right, I almost forgot the big beauty of our 9 snake pirates, Sha-Chi. She even Amazon Lily has given up the throne, and I will wait for you to come back on the Sabodi Archipelago, yes, Rayleigh. Speaking of this, Rayleigh was not ashamed at once, and boasted, oh, it's also my charm that has no place to rest. What about you? Jabba? Roger asked after taking a sip of his drink. Jabba's expression became slightly confused, and he finally shook his head and said, I have already experienced the most thrilling and exciting adventure on the sea, and after that, I think I will go to your hometown and spend the rest of your life quietly. It's pretty good, isn't it? After Jabba finished speaking, he looked at Roger and said, what about you? Going to South Blue, meeting the girl of your dreams. Oh. Roger nodded immediately, and then said, my time is running out, and I owe Rouge too much, so for the rest of the day, I will go back to South Blue to spend more time with her. Members of the Roger pirates have already considered these things, such as Dr. Crocus. He went to sea this time, but he still failed to find the pirates of Brook and others, so he will still return to Upside Down Mountain, back to Cape Twins, to accompany Laboon. Like Kazuki Oden, he is going to go back to Wano Kuni first to see his wife and children, and then go back to the Whitebeard pirates to continue his adventure. No matter how everyone arranges their future, everyone knows that the adventure of the most legendary Roger pirates on this sea is coming to an end. But the great cause they created, the future they created, it is surging, and this sea will soon become very lively. A new era is coming. Undoubtedly, in this new era, there must be existences that are not inferior to their Roger pirates. In the new era, new legends, new chapters, and new stories will be written. Soon, everyone was eating, drinking and having fun on the Oro Jackson. On the calm sea, the pirates' favorite song came. Yo ho 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 ho. Yo ho 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 ho. I'll deliver Bink's wine to your side, like the sea breeze doing whatever it wants, riding the wind and breaking the waves, fire. North Blue, Mignon Island. Mignon Island is close to the northern area of North Blue. Although it is also an island with alternating seasons, winter obviously occupies more time in a year. At this time, Mignon Island is covered with snow and the temperature is very low. And in the courtyard of Donquixote family's residence, Doflamingo was naked from the upper body at this time, exposing his strong but not rigid figure. Spa. Donquixote family's residence on Mignon Island has the only natural hot spring on the island. In the past 2 years, it was transformed into a hot spring garden by Aunt Jola, and it can be regarded as Doflamingo's private soup. The hot spring pool is very large, like a large swimming pool paradise. Doflamingo leans against the hot spring pool, enjoying the cozy feeling lazily. And in the pool, there is a large group of beauties in swimsuits, playing around. The scene is quite beautiful, as if it makes Mignon in winter exude a sense of spring. While Doflamingo was admiring the beauties, Virgo in a padded jacket walked in from outside the courtyard. You really have a leisurely mood. As a capable person, you dare to take a hot spring. Virgo walked to Doflamingo's side and joked. Although he is a capable person, it can't be said that he will never touch water in his life, right? What's the matter with soaking in a hot spring? Doflamingo said confidently. Let alone me, that guy Kuzan has a broken leg, so he still wants to take a hot spring? Virgo did not argue with Doflamingo about these trivial matters, but reported, I just received news from Pika that he will be able to arrive at on Mignon Island this afternoon. Oh. Doflamingo became a little interested and asked, Furfur, how is he doing with the task I gave him? It's not difficult. Virgo smiled and said, the Trafalgar Doctor's family you are following are all on Pika's boat. Really? That's good. Doflamingo nodded in satisfaction. Taking Trafalgar law into his hands in advance can also train him many years in advance. Speaking of which, now our Donquixote family can be regarded as a serious pirate organization. Well, it is officially certified by Naval Headquarters. He, Don Quixote Doflamingo, is also a great pirate with a bounty of 196 million Baileys. So how do you say, you have to take care of the structure of your own pirate team cadres, right? Trafalgar law, you can be your own ship's doctor in the future. We still need to find a good cook. Doflamingo touched his chin and said. Regarding the matter of sailing, he can accommodate everything else, except for eating, which cannot be wronged. As for the candidate for the cook, Doflamingo has already made a plan. He is Helding's good friend Lily Ernstmark's father, Pans Fowler. They are also giants, but they have good cooking skills, and both their father and daughter belong to the pirate camp. Helding had promised Doflamingo to help recruit some fellow giants. Later, he contacted Lily Ernstmark. As soon as the girl heard that Heldingo was working as a pirate, she agreed to come and hang out with him without saying a word. Up. Now, he should be on his way to North Blue, right? With this girl joining in, can her father still be able to run away? Apart from Doflamingo's personal prejudice of being a good cook, the most important thing in sailing is to have a good navigator. To be honest, in the North Blue, or in other words, the Four Seas, navigators are not particularly important, because when navigating in the Four Seas, there are traces to follow, so you just need to memorize it hard, remember the knowledge points, and you can more or less get along with the navigators. But it's different when it comes to the Grand Line. In that damn place, the knowledge points that navigators need to master, such as ocean currents, tides, and astrology, can all be said to be scrapped. The only thing that can be trusted is the record pointer. The first half of the Grand Line was pretty messy, but when it came to New World, the sea voyage was simply terrifying. Lava falling from the sky is not a spectacle. The Whitebeard pirates are great, right? It doesn't mean that the ship capsizes, and they have to dock on the island to rest. Not to mention that Shikigai, a typical navigator negative example. All in all, in the New World, no matter how strong you are, you have to give the sea face. Without an excellent navigator, there may really be the first emperor collapsed in the middle of his business. To be honest, there are quite a few big pirates who go missing at sea every year. And does the Don Quixote family have navigators? Of course there are, and there are quite a few, even many of them have sailed in the New World. After all, they started their business by smuggling, so how could they lack navigators? However, in Doflamingo's view, they really lack a top navigator, as the navigator of the flagship of the Don Quixote family, enjoy the status of a cadre. Who is the most powerful sailor Poseidon on this sea? The answer that Doflamingo can give immediately is, Nami. It's just that Nami is not born yet, so it's a bit embarrassing to ask her to be the navigator of the Don Quixote family, and it's impossible for Doflamingo to say that he will not go to sea before this because of waiting for Nami. So leaving out Nami, Doflamingo is thinking again, who else? After thinking about it, I found that my knowledge of this aspect is really lacking. In my impression, it seems that Blackbeard's deputy, Devil Security Officer Lafitte is a navigator, right? The technology should be quite powerful, after all, when that guy Teach went out to sea in a group, he dared to make waves by bundling a few logs into a raft. Without a good navigator, he should have died long ago. It can be seen that Lafitte's technology should be there. Thinking of this, Doflamingo put Lafitte in his shortlist. If he has the opportunity, he will see if he can turn Teach's corner in advance. Just when Doflamingo was thinking about these things, Virgo called out, "Dover. Dover. Are you listening?" "Ah. Sorry." Doflamingo looked at Virgo a little apologetically and said, "I was distracted just now. What's wrong?" "When you were on the road before, didn't you say that after you arrived at Mignon Island, you would start to regain your kendo? Before I came, Diamante said that he found you a famous sword. If you have time, go to him there. He can't do anything else. He can teach you the basics of swordsmanship. It's still no problem," Virgo said. Doflamingo made a fancy umbrella blade before, which is the kind with a knife hidden in the handle of the umbrella. "It's weird, it's interesting, but to be honest, it's inconvenient, it's not grand enough, it's not upright enough, it's somewhat despicable and sinister." As a result, the umbrella blade was twisted into twists by Sengoku in Cervantes Island. It is estimated that the quality is really not very good. In order to make up for his shortcomings in strength and lack of attack power, Doflamingo is ready to work hard in the direction of a great swordsman, and Diamante, a rare great swordsman in Don Quixote's family, is of course happy for this. Since coming to Mignon Island, he has been secretly helping Doflamingo bring me closer. As the saying goes, if a worker wants to be good at his work, he must first sharpen his weapon. To be a swordsman, how can you not have a famous sword? Thinking of this, Doflamingo was still looking forward to it. He stood up directly from the pool, tied the towel on the side around his waist and said, "It's not too late, let's go and see. Diamante found me some kind of famous knife." Virgo waited for Doflamingo in the yard for a while, and after a while, a well-dressed Doflamingo came out from the back room. The two walked side by side, and Virgo suddenly asked, "Speaking of which, Marine doesn't seem to want to trouble us now, so Cervantes, do you want to rebuild?" "Cervantes." Doflamingo murmured softly when he heard the words, and finally shook his head and said, "No need, North Blue is too small to accommodate us after all. Rebuilding Cervantes will not take 3 to 2 years, or even 3 to 5 years. After all, the place has been bombed into ruins by the Marine, and it will take a lot of effort to clean it up. Not to mention, Doflamingo killed everyone on the island? After a few years of tossing and rebuilding Cervantes, it is estimated that the Don Quixote family should make a big splash in New World, and they will have to move when the time comes. Trouble." While the two were talking, the brat Gladius hurried over from the street outside the courtyard and almost bumped into Doflamingo at the gate of the courtyard. "I've told you many times, Gladius, don't be so frizzy." Doflamingo reached out and tapped Gladius on the head. Gladius didn't care about this at all, and said in a shocking tone, "My lord, look, today's big news, the Roger pirates conquered the Grand Line." Doflamingo was stunned for a moment, then immediately took the newspaper from Gladius and took a closer look. The title of today's newspaper is The Greatest Adventure. Before Roger, there was no One Piece in this sea. The person at the top of the pirates is called the Pirate Overlord. He was Rocks back then, but now he can be regarded as Shiki. But unlike Rocks, Shiki is not unique. In this sea, there are still a few pirates who can be equal to him. Like Edward Newgate, or rather, Minor D. Roger. And since the Battle of Edwall ended with the victory of Roger's pirate group, Shiki has been recognized as inferior to Roger in the pirate field. This advance and retreat, it can be said that the most popular pirate in the sea at present is Roger. Now, the Roger pirates have made another earth-shattering building. They conquered the entire Grand Line. This matter was like embellishing his crown with the most dazzling gemstone. The world no longer wants to call Roger a cheesy pirate overlord. In the Greatest Adventure of the News of the World, the report took the lead in using the title, One Piece. Maybe the News of the World didn't expect that Roger was really crowned king at the very beginning. Become the first ever One Piece. The man who really stood at the top of pirates. Raftel. One Piece? Doflamingo murmured softly, reading the newspaper. "It's really shocking, someone can conquer the Grand Line," Virgo said with a shocked look. The Greatest Adventure is really appropriate." Doflamingo laughed. The boy who walked out of East Blue Log Town finally ascended to his own throne. The wave of the new era is about to arrive. Different from the shock of Virgo and others, Doflamingo had expected this, so after a short sigh of relief, he restuffed the newspaper in his hand to Gladius and said, Okay, don't make a fuss here, go about your own business." After speaking, Doflamingo took the lead to leave here. After Virgo came back to his senses, he hurriedly followed. Unlike the calmness of the Don Quixote family, the outside world, it can be said that the entire sea was shocked by the greatest adventure of the Roger pirates. Especially the world government. The world government itself is very taboo about Raftel and historical texts, but those things have been hidden for more than 800 years. After a long time, many people have almost forgotten about this matter. Fortunately, the Roger pirates ran to Raftel unexpectedly. This time, the world government is really anxious. They are very afraid that the Roger pirates will say something that should not be said to the outside world, revealing some dark secrets that they have covered up for hundreds of years. Therefore, the article on the news of the world has not been released yet, and the 5 elders who got the relevant information from the CP agency worked overtime to hold a meeting to discuss the matter about the Roger pirates. 2 hours later, very serious orders were given to Naval Headquarters. It is required that Naval Headquarters must completely eliminate the Roger pirate group in the shortest possible time, and they must not be allowed to continue galloping on the sea. The higher-ups issued a death order, and Marshal Kong was also very troubled, so he immediately called a meeting with Sengoku, Zephyr, Garp, Suru and other marine bosses. There is only one goal of the meeting, and that is how to get rid of the Roger pirates quickly and steadily. As a result, the meeting on Marine's side was not over yet, and the intelligence department sent another urgent information. What? The Roger pirates have been disbanded. Marshal Kong looked at the information in his hand in a daze, and cried out in surprise. In the meeting room, Garp suddenly jumped up from his chair and shouted, "Impossible, absolutely impossible." Garp hadn't accepted the reality yet. There was a rapid knock on the door, and then another intelligence agent rushed in with a newspaper and said, Marshal, the urgent special edition of the News of the World. The Roger pirates announced their disbandment in the newspapers." The bosses at Naval Headquarters are confused. The Roger pirates conquered the entire territory of the Grand Line and were recognized as the One Piece king by the world. As a result, the throne was not even popular, and the whole group was immediately disbanded. What kind of bullshit is this? Has the indifference to fame and fortune reached this point? You are amazing, you are clear. Just when Naval Headquarters was flying like dogs and dogs, the whole world was being played around by Roger pirates one after another showmanship. Doflamingo has come to Diamante's home and is watching the famous knife that Diamante found for him. The knife looks really good. Doflamingo touched his chin and said with a complicated expression. The knife in front of me has been slightly out of the sheath, and the condition of the blade and the blade can be seen. It can be said that the whole body is cold, with chaotic cross patterns, thick blade back, light and thin front, unparalleled sharpness, suitable weight, no flaws, and restrained evil spirit. At first glance, it is a first-class good knife, definitely from the hands of famous masters. The scabbard is emerald color, embroidered with gold thread, inlaid with black jade, and the end is extremely gorgeous, but because of the overall dark tone, this gorgeousness looks very low-key. I have to say, for the beauty of this knife, Doflamingo gives it a perfect score. But regardless of the appearance, if you take a closer look at this knife, you will find that this knife seems extremely strange, vaguely, as if there are ghosts roaring in the blade. When Doflamingo held it in his hand just now, he even felt some chills. These features, integrated together, generally speaking, constitute a demon sword. Thinking of this, Doflamingo looked up at Diamante and said, "If I remember correctly, Virgo told me that. You helped me find a famous knife, right?" "That's right." Diamante nodded as a matter of course. Cough. Doflamingo cleared his throat slightly, and then said, "But the question is, the one in front of me is a demon sword, right?" "What's wrong with the demon sword?" Diamante was very surprised. It is indeed a demon sword, but it does not prevent it from being ranked among the top 12. "The most valuable property," Doflamingo said in amazement. "This knife is among the most important property." "That's right. This sword is the 9th out of the 12 crafts of the greatest industry. The demon sword Zindu," Diamante introduced proudly. "Zindu. Why does it sound so familiar to me?" Doflamingo touched his chin and asked in confusion. "Maybe you have heard of its legend? According to legend, more than 200 years ago, there was a big pirate named Hellscream, who forged this demon sword. His masters in the past all died tragically. Therefore, it is rumored that the crossing of the heart hinders the Lord," Diamante said. Doflamingo still felt a little strange, this inexplicable sense of familiarity. He thought for a while and asked, "By the way, how did you find this knife?" "When I was on the way to Mignon Island, I already sent a message in the Dark World, saying that I would receive a famous knife," Diamante said immediately. "As for this heart crossing, it is a bit strange to say. It was a partner of ours in the world government, who secretly handed it over to me, without even asking for money." "The government of the world?" Doflamingo was stunned for a moment, then clapped his hands and said, "Damn, I said it looks familiar. When I was young, I saw it at the house of my big cousin Donquixote Claudius. However, the knife was hanging on the wall at the time." Don't think about it. This knife must have been given to him secretly by his cousin Claudius. Speaking of it, the relationship between Doflamingo and Claudius has been good since childhood. But now this guy gave himself such a demon sword. I don't know what he means. Are you cursing me to die quickly? But regardless of the rumors of the demon sword, Doflamingo doesn't believe in this fate. Anyway, just kidding. If he can be killed by the demon sword, it must be because his life is not strong enough. If you want to blame yourself for your lack of strength. Why put all the crimes on a knife? Zindu. Doflamingo picked up the demon knife from the knife holder, felt its sharp momentum, and said softly, "From today on, I will be your master. Please give me more advice in the future." As soon as the voice fell, Doflamingo took advantage of the situation and vibrated his knife. I saw Zindu's blade, like a stream of light, slashing across the stone table in front of him, and in the next moment, the table made of stone was cut into two. The incision is so smooth, it's amazing to look at. And the most important thing is that Doflamingo didn't use any force, nor did he use any skills. This knife is the pure sharpness of Zindu. A good knife, worthy of being the best, Doflamingo praised. Mignon Island, in the snow behind the Donquixote family resident. At this moment, Doflamingo is holding Zindu, doing swing practice here. Not far away, Diamante is like an instructor, constantly correcting Doflamingo's posture and teaching him some basic skills. It seems that you haven't held a knife for so many years, you have forgotten the basics I taught you back then, Diamante complained. Sorry, Diamante, I have to trouble you to teach me again, Doflamingo said in an apologetic tone. Diamante froze for a moment, then shook his head and said, "No, Dover, it is a great honor for me to be able to pick up the knife again, and there is nothing troublesome about it." Then the same sentence, if you want to swing a knife, you need a steady hand. Only when you have a steady hand can you be fast, accurate, and ruthless, and if you want a steady hand. Here Diamante tells Doflamingo some of the basics of fencing. And Doflamingo was listening to Diamante's explanation carefully while waving the knife in contact. Speaking of it, it doesn't matter that Doflamingo still has time to soak in a hot spring or something, in fact, his daily schedule is full. Waking up in the morning and finishing meals is the practice of hockey. It is necessary to meditate on observation hockey and sharpen armament hockey. As for conqueror's hockey, it does not need to be practiced, nor can it be practiced. It grows naturally with people's encounters and experiences. As for conqueror's winding or something, it's the same principle as armament hockey, and it's not a particularly difficult thing. After a set of hockey training is over, I will report to Lao Ji to continue practicing Diwangchen, and at the same time polish my physical and fighting skills. It's noon. After eating, you can take a short break to think about the development of your abilities, and after that, you have to come to Diamante to practice swordsmanship. Although the schedule is very rushed, it sounds a bit complicated and unrealistic, and it feels unreliable. But in fact, Doflamingo's training is very heavy, and it is also thanks to his physique that he has become a vampire now, and he can recover his state through vitality. Otherwise, he will probably be tired after finishing the morning routine a dead pig. Therefore, normally speaking, the amount of Doflamingo's practice is impossible for ordinary people to complete. Only a superhuman physique and talent can do this. While Doflamingo was practicing swordplay against the wind and snow, a three-masted sailing ship with the flag of Donquixote family moored slowly at the port of Mignon Island. Speaking of which, although the Donquixote family has a resident on Mignon Island, this is not Cervantes after all. As North Blue's only surviving stronghold of the Dark World, the forces on Mignon Island are still complicated. However, when Doflamingo and others started to stay here, they could clearly feel how deterrent the big pirate with a bounty of 196 million baileys is. The people on this island dare not provoke the members of the Donquixote family at all. In the past, Doflamingo could only be regarded as the North Blue bully, but now, he is the signature of the North Blue evil forces. Whether it's a pirate or a person in the Dark World, whoever sees him, Donquixote family, can't give him 3 points of face. After the boat stopped, a tall and strong figure walked down the ladder first. This figure is obviously Pika, the veteran cadre of the Donquixote family. Pika is a strong guy, and there are snowflakes on Mignon Island, so he doesn't mind it. He wears his upper body naked, as if he is specially showing off his muscles. Wearing shorts doesn't feel inappropriate at all. And behind Pika, not long after, a family came down from the boat. This group of people is the Trafalgar Law family of 4. Dr. Nelson, this is Mignon Island, Pika said respectfully to Trafalgar Law's father. What's even more surprising is that Pika's original shrill and funny noise has now become thick and powerful, much more normal. Maybe that's why he respects Nelson so much. The #1 doctor in Frevens, he really has 2 brushes, and he really cured Pika's noise. Dr. Nelson nodded, and then said, although I have asked several times along the way, I still can't help but want to ask again, Pika, your young master really has a way, or ideas, can cure platinum lead disease. Originally, the Nelson family of 4 had no intention of joining the Donquixote family at all. Just kidding, people want money, status, and reputation. He is one of the best doctors in North Blue. I have nothing to do when I'm idle, what can I do wrong, and I have to go to gangsters. But when Pika took out the big killer and said that his young master had a way to cure platinum lead disease, Nelson immediately agreed to join the Donquixote family. No way, he is a Trafalgar family, and they have been Frevens for generations, so platinum lead disease can't get around his family. 2 years earlier, Nelson discovered signs of platinum lead disease in himself and his wife, but it was not serious. But recently, not only the couple, but also their son Trafalgar Law and daughter Lamy have begun to show the initial symptoms of platinum lead disease. This discovery made Nelson anxious. However, as the top doctor in North Blue, Nelson tried every means and thought hard, but he found nothing and had no clue about platinum lead disease. So, when he heard that Don Quixote Doflamingo had a solution, even if he felt very unreliable in his heart, things that even his top doctors could not handle, what would you, the leader of the dark world, know? But he had no choice, he could only gamble, so he still came. The young master will never deceive his family with lies, Pika said without hesitation. With his loyalty to Doflamingo, not to mention that Doflamingo can cure the platinum lead disease, even if Doflamingo said that he will be able to ascend in daylight tomorrow, Pika probably believes it. Soon, Trafalgar Law and his group arrived at the residence of the Donquixote family. After Pika entered the station, the first cadre he met was Virgo. Virgo. Pika took the initiative to say hello to Virgo, with a somewhat ostentatious tone in his tone. Virgo didn't react when he saw Pika, and said with a smile, Pika, it's been a long time, and you're finally back. Are these people Dr. Trafalgar and his family? Ahem. Seeing that Virgo didn't react, Pika cleared his throat deliberately, and said in a thicker voice, that's right, this is Dr. Trafalgar Nelson and his family. It's an honor to meet you, Dr. Nelson, I've known you for a long time. Virgo shook hands with Dr. Nelson very politely. He still didn't react. Pika twitched his face when he saw this, and said, Virgo, you haven't noticed. Is there any change? Ah. Virgo showed a face of sudden realization, and under Pika's slightly concerned gaze, he clapped his hands suddenly and said, indeed, you seem to be much stronger than before, because you ate. Is it the reason for that stone fruit? Pika? To be honest, Virgo, I feel that our relationship seems to be unsustainable. This brother has nothing to do. I've changed so much, haven't you noticed? Seeing Pika's collapsed expression visible to the naked eye, Virgo smiled again and said, ha 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 ha, I'm just joking, Pika, how could I possibly change you so much? Pika was stunned for a moment, and then said, you are really wicked. Well, today you are not wearing a helmet, Virgo said without hesitation. As soon as his words fell, Pika punched Vigo hard in the stomach, and sent him flying from the corridor into the snowdrift outside the yard. After struggling twice, Virgo got up from the snowdrift, and asked very puzzled, what are you doing? Beat you. Pika said with a displeased face. Virgo was stunned for a moment, and suddenly said in surprise, oh, Pika, your voice. If you had found out 2 minutes earlier, you wouldn't have been punched by me, Pika said with a dark face. A few minutes later, Virgo and Pika shuttled through the courtyard of the station, introducing the current situation to Pika, who hadn't come back for a long time. So, now, our identities are all pirates, but the young master has put pressure on Marine through our network in North Blue, so at the moment, Marine doesn't seem to have any plans to deal with us. Meaning, I guess, as long as we don't take the initiative to provoke Marine, we won't have any conflicts in a short time, Virgo said. The family business? Pika asked a little worried. The young master said, everything will continue as usual, Virgo said. While talking and joking, a few people had already walked to the back mountain. From a distance, in the icy snow, there was a figure, wearing exercise pants, with his upper body naked, showing off his strong muscles, constantly waving long knife. It can be vaguely seen that in this icy cold wind, his body is actually dripping with sweat. In the tea room, Dr. Nelson's family of 4 were sitting on the sofa, and Virgo and Pika were also there. After a while, Doflamingo, who was wiping his slightly damp hair with a towel, walked in from the door, looked at the untouched tea on the table, and said with a smile, don't be so nervous, and don't be so polite, Nelson. Nelson agreed with his mouth, but it could be seen that he was really nervous when facing Doflamingo. No way, Doflamingo's reputation, not to mention in North Blue, is the kind of night cry. Not long ago, it was reported in the newspaper that he massacred tens of thousands of people in Cervantes in a fit of anger. Can a good citizen like Nelson not be afraid of him? Doflamingo put the towel in his hand on his shoulder, then looked at Pika and said, "Long time no see, Pika." "My lord, long time greetings," Pika said with some excitement. Doflamingo smiled, then looked at Nelson and said, "First of all, on behalf of all the members of the Donquixote family, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to you for curing my blood brother Pika, who has had a sore throat for many years." As if sensing Doflamingo's gentle attitude, Nelson swallowed his saliva, pulled himself together and said, "My lord, you don't have to say that. As a doctor, curing diseases and saving lives is what I should do." "Young master." Dovron brother Ming was stunned for a moment. "Good guy, is this Trafalgar Law dad so enlightened? Before I even opened my mouth, he already called me, young master." In fact, Nelson didn't know the meaning of this. Along the way, he saw that everyone on Mignon Island called Doflamingo, young master, so he also followed suit. But Doflamingo didn't know this, so he laughed happily when he saw him and said, "Fufuro furfur, since you have called me your young master, Nelson, we will be a family from now on. Say no more." Nelson. This, a misunderstanding. But he was just about to explain, but then he thought, when he decided to meet Doflamingo, wasn't he already ready to join this villainous family? As long as he can save his wife and children, so what if he is an incarnation of the villain? So Nelson opened his mouth and didn't refute anything in the end. At this time, Doflamingo looked at a kid sitting next to Nelson, who seemed to be only 5 or 6 years old. But even though he was younger than in his impression, Doflamingo was still very sure of that appearance. Trafalgar Law, in the original story, the vengeful spirit who sent Doflamingo to hell by the future himself. "Young master, do you have any questions?" Nelson asked with some doubts. Only then did Flamingo look away, and said with a smile, "No, there's no problem. I just saw extraordinary potential from this little guy. I think he will definitely become the mainstay of our Donquixote family in the future." Although Trafalgar Law didn't quite understand the meaning of these words, he could tell that he was being praised, so his face was a little blushing, with a look of embarrassment. After chatting for a while, Nelson finally couldn't help but asked, "Master, before you came, Pika told me that you have a cure for platinum lead terminal illness? Is this true?" Doflamingo sighed softly when he heard the words, and then said, "From the perspective of conventional medicine, platinum lead is indeed an incurable disease. You, Nelson, are an authority on this point, so you know better than me, right?" "Yes. Platinum lead is a metal toxin, and what's even more troublesome is that it can be integrated into blood and genes to form heredity. The inherited blood will be born with this toxin. In other words, the disease has developed to the present, and it has become a genetic disease of the Frefans. It is a defect that Frefans are born with, and therefore, there is no cure for it," Nelson said. "Platinum lead will permeate your internal organs, your blood, your bone marrow, in short, it exists in every aspect of your body. Coupled with its basically undetectable size, it is difficult to physically remove it by medical means. Actually, as early as hundreds of years ago, when platinum lead was discovered for the first time, the government of the world had already noticed the existence of platinum lead disease. But for the huge benefit, they concealed all this, so, Frefans are cursed like this," Doflamingo said softly. "The government of the world has known for a long time," Nelson said in surprise. At this moment, Virgo said, "Not only the government of the world, but also the royal family of Frevens know that, if nothing else happens, they have taken refuge on Marie Joy's. And according to our Donquixote family, judging from the information available, the world government is not prepared to save Frevens, and the future of this country is already doomed to perish." Nelson sat on the sofa sluggishly, as if he couldn't accept this reality for a while. Seeing this, Doflamingo brought the topic back to the right track. "I just said that platinum lead disease cannot be solved from the perspective of conventional medicine, but it does not mean that this disease is really unsolvable. Nelson, what is the most magical power in this sea? What is it?" Nelson was stunned for a moment, then he quickly reacted and exclaimed, "Devil fruit." "That's right." Doflamingo picked up the teacup on the table, took a sip and said, "It's a devil fruit. As far as I know, there is a paramecia devil fruit named op fruit. The fruit has the ability to healing all diseases in the world. I think platinum lead disease is also within this range, so theoretically speaking, as long as we find op fruit, then, the platinum lead disease in your body can be cured." Although Nelson is one of the best doctors in North Blue, he is just an ordinary person after all, and it is impossible for him to have access to the devil fruit illustrated book, so he never thought that there is such a devil fruit in the world. "My lord." Nelson wanted to say something excitedly. But Doflamingo waved his hand and interrupted him at the same time. I know what you want to say, but devil fruit is very random, so it is very difficult to find this fruit. You said, our Donquixote family will try our best to find this devil fruit. As for the result, I really can't tell you the number. Nelson froze for a moment, but finally nodded and said, I know, but even so, I would like to thank you, young master, for clarifying my doubts. Doflamingo grinned at the corner of his mouth, and then said abruptly, speaking of which, my ship still lacks a ship doctor. Are you interested, Nelson? I don't know what your ship is, my lord. Nelson asked hesitantly. I'm a pirate now, and my ship is naturally a pirate ship. Doflamingo said without hesitation. Nelson smiled helplessly, and then said, when I was young, I also wanted to go to sea and be a free pirate. Is it finally come true now? Fooferfer, don't worry, this will be a journey that you won't regret. Doflamingo said with a smile. Just in time for the Donquixote family to have fun. At Naval Headquarters Marineford. In the backyard of the Ministry of Intelligence, Rozinante was sitting under the shade of a tree with a confused and sad expression. He took out a cigarette from his pocket, bit it on his mouth, took out a lighter and lit it. After a while, black smoke rose. That's right, this guy accidentally set his clothes on fire. Are you setting yourself on fire here, idiot? Just when Rozinante panicked and rolled on the ground trying to extinguish the flames on his body, Guillaume just walked in from the door. At the same time as her words fell, the golden pila hanging around her waist was already out of its sheath, and a blast of wind pressure was cut out. The flame on Rozinante's body was instantly extinguished by this wind pressure. Thank you, Guillaume, I almost died, Rozinante said with some fear. Guillaume rolled his eyes at Rozinante, and then said, Are you thinking about your brother again? Rozinante nodded, and said in a deep voice, I was thinking, how can I stop him? Stop him what? Guillaume asked again. Stop him. Falling into the abyss of darkness and destruction. Rozinante hesitated. Guillaume laughed disdainfully when he heard the words, and then said, Rozinante, listen to my advice. That brother of yours is not easy to get along with, you'd better not touch him again in your life. Do you understand?